Okay. Well, I'm getting 1:22 Eastern Standard Time on my clock. I think we are ready to go. Before we get started, did we have any questions from the first half of today's session? Any other questions or things that might have settled and you thought about, oh, wait, let me ask that when we come back? Give you guys just a second to do that. You can throw it in the chat or unmute yourself. And welcome back, Melissa. Questions, questions, questions. Just as a reminder, materials can be found in the materials link. This is being recorded and will get posted within a week. We appreciate your patience as we get that. The link is not going to be invalid anytime soon, so you can always refer back to it. Trying to think of what else. The only thing I would say is when you're watching the recordings, you're not really going to be able to see what's going on in the chat box, but obviously you're going to see our interaction with asking the questions. So there is that. And I think that's pretty much it. And if you guys have any other questions or concerns or anything like that, feel free to email me, Wista. I'm plugging your email, Wista. And Vince, Next Venture Consult at gmail.com. Did I get that right, Vince? Next Venture Consult at gmail.com. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Can't hear you. And I can't unmute you. Next Venture Consult at Gmail. Beautiful. I would exit the web browser one, Vince. You're in. Is he in here twice?
Yeah, Crystal, I think so.
Yeah, Vince, you're in here twice. So you got to close either the web browser version or the application version. Oh, he's gone altogether. While we wait for Vince, are there any questions or concerns? I hope you didn't lose power. It was storming here. Let me send a text. Did we all have a nice breakfast or lunch? There he is.
Here I am. I don't know what happened.
It's all good. I was like, where'd he go? disappeared on
Did you
me.
hear everything you said?
Yeah.
All right, now I need to share.
Yes.
Okay, try. Bear with me, everyone. We're getting there. Let's minimize this.
I see me looking into me. There we go.
What was that?
There we go. And just again, because I know it was storming down here, Vince. I don't know if it moved up north towards you, but I'd turn off your camera just as I'm going to just save bandwidth and all that.
I'm trying to do that. Let's see.
Hello, me. Beautiful.
Okay, we good?
There we go. Beautiful.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being patient as we manipulate our way through these programs. Okay, part 2 of 3. We're gonna get a little more detail. I talked before about the SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, trying to get an idea where, as grant writers, we need an idea where the weaknesses are, where we have advantages, where, what we need to do within ourselves, within our department, and, perhaps the tribe itself to get a better understanding. And from there, we're going to segue into goal development using the logic model, more details there, and then finish with navigating through online grant opportunity portals. So we're going to take a look at what it's like if you're not exposed to how to navigate and search for grant opportunities through federal agency grants. Going to take a look at that. And we're also going to talk and look at some opportunities on the private sector. With corporations, also with community foundation and community philanthropic organizations and foundation centers. So we're going to take a look at that too. And that's going to be the first half of the afternoon. Then we're going to do an activity. And actually, we're going to do an activity after this section right here before we even get into the searching, because we want to do the activity that involves everything we talked about this morning. And then later this afternoon, about somewhere around 3 o'clock or so, we'll start getting into the actual narrative part of the program and then another activity. So again, any questions or concerns you might have, put them in the chat box, or give us some indication, and we'll do our best to try to answer them for you. And if we don't have an answer, we'll figure out, might have to do a little research, put it into what we call the parking lot, which means an answer will be forthcoming one way or another. Because I can't say we know everything about everything, but we'll give it a shot. You know what the course description is? It's about putting things together, understanding the process, the fundamentals that grant writers need to have to put it all together, to be able to feel comfortable about writing narratives, knowing that they understand the skill sets that are needed to be able to do it and have the wherewithal. This morning, I talked about 1, 2, and 3, understanding the role of the grant writer, soliciting information or attempting to from the community and from leadership, and developing a project or program team. Right now, I'm going to move into the second third, which is the SWOT analysis, goal development, little activity, and then finish up with navigating, and then we'll work. Okay, here's the grant cycle. We did the first 2, and we're on the left side of the screen. We're starting to move into the part where we are going to be able to put together and organize the package, the narrative package for from a generic standpoint for just about any type of grant, whether it be federal funding or whether it be on the private sector. And that's a lot of things. Go back here for just for a second. That's a lot of things we don't talk about a lot. You don't see a lot in grant training programs, and that is pursuing opportunities on the private side. That's why I want to spend a little bit of time talking about corporations, talking about community organizations, and talking about those foundations that are out there, and trying to take a look at them and get a better understanding what their thought process is in this whole philanthropic concept that we're trying to tap into. There's all kinds of them out there. There's all kinds of corporations that give money. There's all kinds of, in fact, let me go to the second page here. There's all kinds of community organizations, and there's all kinds of foundations out there. And we need to be able to have the skill sets and understand how to navigate, how to find them. But first, let's look internally. Let's take a look at, we need to understand where our assets are internally, where our weaknesses are, where our threats are, and then we're going to move into a little different look at that logic model, hopefully a little deeper look, looking at different things, tying things together. So let's start with the SWOT analysis. I know some of you have heard of it, some of you might not heard of this. A SWOT analysis, SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are something that's internal. We'll go into that. Opportunities and threats are just that outside of the organization, like partnerships that we talked about. That's a perfect example of an opportunity that is outside of the organization. That's the whole idea of creating partnerships. It's an asset, it's a resource, it's an opportunity outside the organization to take advantage of. It falls very nicely into the SWOT analysis, into the O part, which is opportunities. So let's start with strengths. Strengths of yourself, strengths of your department, strengths of your organization, strengths of your TDHE. Think of it internally. There are perceived and a lot of real strengths or assets of your organization, of your department, of your tribe, of your TDHE that make it distinctive. What are those? What are the things that it or you or they do best? That your company, that your customers or constituents or clients really care about. What are those things that it does that sets it apart from other organizations, other departments, other people? So that's what a strength is, generally speaking. On the opposite of that, we have the weaknesses internally, internal weaknesses. A lot of weakness comes from lack of communication, but there could be other things involved. It is an internal process, at least for sake of the SWOT analysis. There are either perceived or real weaknesses, or as I like to call them, challenges to the organization that can be debilitating. And this is where we need to be honest with ourselves and honest when we go through this process. And going through a SWOT analysis is a good practice for a department to go through, for an organization to go through. Just if we can be honest with ourselves and honest with others, without naming names, without pointing fingers, where we are challenged in our operation, where we are challenged in our fiscal responsibilities, our fiduciary responsibilities, where we are challenged in our operational responsibilities, and being honest, where we are challenged in our personal responsibilities to ourselves and to our family, to our friends, and to our employer, etc. So this process can be used for ourselves as well as to the department, the tribe, if we're honest with each other and honest with ourselves. What can we do better as a weakness? Where are we weak? Where are we challenged? What can we do to improve? Where are we vulnerable? Is there anything that is dangerously vulnerable, dangerously lacking in what we do? Hopefully not. Hopefully these are all things, whether they're positive or weak or weaknesses, that we can identify, and we can do. We can mitigate. We can change things. So let me stop here just for a second, because something just crossed my mind. This is very, very important. A lot of all organizations that receive federal funding, including those of us that receive the Indian Housing Block Grant from HUD. It's federal funding. We know we've got to comply with all the federal regulations, within the NAHASDA legislation and with the 2 CFR Part 200 uniform guidance, along with HUD's 24 CFR Part 1000, the Native American housing activities. Those are the regulations. And buried within the regulations, specifically within the uniform guidance, I told you 2 CFR Part 200, 302, and 303. Another regulation that's in there is, and this is also carries over into the housing activities, HUD housing activities, 24 CFR Part 1000, and that is self-monitoring. We are required to do, and call it what you wish, HUD calls it self-monitoring. The federal regulations call it self-monitoring. It's also known as internal auditing. It's taking your internal controls, which are translated into policies and procedures, right? And monitoring their effectiveness, all of them. Self-monitoring is a requirement that has to be done at least once a year. And those of us that receive the Indian Housing Block Grant should know, or do know, that a self-monitoring report has to be combined with our annual performance report, the APR, which is submitted at the end of our respective fiscal year. So the requirement in the regulation says that self-monitoring has to be done once a year, combined with the APR, and there is a self-monitoring document on HUD's website that you can download. It's a large document. It contains 11 different components, from everything from operation to procurement to lead poisoning in paint, and environmental. There's all kinds of different components. If you can use the one of those 11, you can use all of them or any of them that apply to your operation. Just want to make sure that you use the ones that do apply to your operation. All right. So self-monitoring is requirement. We got to do it every year. We got to document the fact that we have internal controls. We got to use this self-monitoring document that basically reiterates the fact on a HUD form that we are following HUD federal regulations. We are submitting that. My recommendation is to do it not just annually towards the end of your fiscal year, but quarterly, at least semi-annually, but hopefully quarterly. And here's my reason why. You want to do an internal audit or self-monitoring quarterly to make sure you do not have anything that you see on this screen in front of you, any weaknesses, any challenges in your operation, in your compliance, in your fiscal responsibilities. That's what self-monitoring does. So why wait to the very end of your fiscal year to do a report, come across something that's an internal weakness, and then have to report that in your report? You want to avoid that like the plague. You don't want to submit a self-monitoring report that says you have an internal weakness. No, you want to make sure that your internal report that goes with your annual performance report is squeaky clean. In other words, you've identified all the potential weaknesses because you're doing it quarterly, and those are all internal. You do not have to submit them if you're doing them quarterly or semi-annually. Those are internal documents, but the goal is to document that within your internal records and make sure that your weaknesses are identified and corrected, right? So that when you do the self-monitoring report that's required to go along with your APR, it is pristine. That is my recommendation, just and best practice for doing this for 11 years. You want to make sure you either that or you're going to lie on your form, and that's not right either. Now you're getting into fraud territory. So do yourself a favor when you're doing internal auditing, document that, use the HUD form to the best of your ability. Make sure when you look at that HUD form, that self-monitoring. Now, I've been out of the picture here for a couple of months. I don't think things have changed. I like working with HUD. I like working with the ONAP office, but a lot of times with HUD, at least on a corporate level, it takes them time to catch up with their own regulations that they change. Like I'm probably not telling you anything new. The HUD regulations that they document in the self-monitoring report, double check them because they tend to be referencing older requirements, older regulations. So if you have any questions on that, is it an old regulation or new regulation? Shoot me an email. I'll be glad to troubleshoot that for you. But just double check, make sure that everything is up to speed on the document that you're using. But use it. Use that form to identify weaknesses within your operation. You've got to do internal controls. You've got to do self-monitoring. So use the self-monitoring as a tool to help you eliminate weaknesses. So are there perceived and real weaknesses or challenges? Sure there are. Our job as grant writers is to make sure we understand what they are. And do they have a debilitating effect in what we're trying to do as grant writers and what we're trying to accomplish with our major initiatives and our goals, et cetera, and ultimately with our narrative writing for the grant we're trying to ultimately pursue. What could do better? How can things change? You might not have the answer to that, especially if it's something outside your department. But if you understand the weakness and the challenge and where you're vulnerable, at least you know what the problem is. Is there anything dangerously lacking? Hopefully, those are terrible words. Report, you don't want to see them on a self-monitoring report or in your internal controls. That two-word phrase, dangerously lacking, is a dangerous phrase. So opportunity, we're segueing now. Now we're moving from outside of the organization, from strength and weaknesses internally, to look out at opportunities outside of the organization that we might or might not have any influence over. Most of the times we don't. Most of the time, these outside opportunities, most of them, not always, but most of them are kind of like trickle down effect. They affect us, hopefully in a positive way. That's what opportunities are.
Hey, Vince. Oh, did we lose him? No. Vince, you keep cutting in and out.
Everything okay?
You keep cutting in and out. I'm not sure.
So sorry.
It's okay. Folks, just bear with us as we get through this. I'm not sure why. He was working perfectly fine all morning. If the issue continues, Vince will have you jump out and then jump back in.
Okay. How am I
And
coming from?
okay, and we lost the presentation screen. All I see is black.
I can see it.
There we go. There we go. Oh, no.
How about now?
There we go.
Good?
Yep.
You're down. Any opportunities? Can you see
Sorry?
opportunities? Can you see the opportunity screen?
Well, you're on topics right now.
Topics.
There we go.
Okay.
Beautiful.
All right. So we were talking about opportunities. Am I coming across? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Opportunities are outside the organization. I talked earlier about partnerships. Partnerships are a great opportunity. They're out there, they're waiting to be taken advantage of. Sometimes we have the opportunity, sometimes we don't, but partnerships are a great example of opportunities. There's also emerging trends that are out there. Social media is one, it's exploding. There's all kinds of social media opportunities there to take advantage of. To get our message out to the community or to solicit information. Works both ways. So that is there. And the one that is probably most scary is threats that exist that we have no control over, whether it be reduced federal funding that makes its way down on a national level down to regional, state, and then local level, tribal levels. Federal funding, it could be anything. There's all kinds of threats out there that we have to work with, and try to avoid as best we can. So here they are, all four of them kind of in a bird's eye view: strength, weaknesses that are internal, opportunities and threats that are external. So let's take a look at a couple. I'm going to just go through this very quickly from my perspective. Hopefully you can see this on the left side of the screen, my interpretation of some internal strengths that are good for the whole organization: staff expertise, morale and attitude of our colleagues, and leadership. Leadership itself that is transparent, and open to suggestion, leadership that we can work with. A strong mission and vision that everyone understands, a good corporate style, kind of an open door philosophy, so to speak, of corporate operation, a good reputation, positive relationships internally, person to person, that type of thing, department to department, and internal controls that are put in place as policies and procedures that are reviewed on a regular basis, updated where needed, and appropriate to the federal regulations that are out there that match up with the internal controls that are needed for the Indian Housing Block Grant and any other federal grant monies that come in. So that's my version, just a quick glance of internal. And here's just some examples: professional development, happy employees or loyal employees. That's just a quick example of some internal strengths. Well, let's look at the other side of the coin. Sometimes these can be perceived and sometimes they're real. Turnover, that's a real thing, and that can be debilitating sometime at any level. Fast turnover or rapid turnover of employees can be detrimental to an organization. We see that a lot as a training organization. The Native Learning Center was dealing that not within itself, but that was what was happening out in the bigger community, within the tribes and the TDHEs. There was turnover, so we were constantly in demand for training programs because people were turning over for various reasons. New staff coming on board, and they didn't, understand the role. And then we would get involved from a training standpoint. So that could be something. Bad morale, bad attitude. One person with bad attitude could bring a whole organization down. It doesn't take much to be able to do that. Lack of efficiency, that's something that you want to try to mitigate as much as possible. That's where our self-monitoring comes in, understanding lack of efficiency and where it's generating from. What's the problem? That's going to be crucial to understanding how your operation works. One of my favorite there's in the middle: fear of change. This is the way we've always done it. We don't know how to make changes. Sometimes change is put upon us, it's thrust upon us because of certain things that happen. Look at COVID over the past 2 years and what that did to us, all of us collectively, in our operations of our organizations. How it, from a good standpoint and from a bad standpoint. Here, from a bad standpoint, it put a lot of burden on a lot of people, not just because they were getting sick and losing work time, but because of the pressure that was putting on organizations and businesses, tribes, etc., on being able to do what they needed to do for their customers, clients, members, constituents. So fear of change, location can be an issue. Penalty and restrictions that are put upon us either by the tribal entity or by higher authorities, maybe our funding organization. Those penalties and restrictions can be binding and can limit us. Internal politics is another one, and lack of professional development. Of course, I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you're all here because you want professional development, but lack of professional development, that very line there, professional development, is included in the federal regulations. Bet you didn't know that. It is included. You must have internal controls in the form of a policy and procedure that say that you do provide appropriate continuing education or professional development, however you want to phrase it, for your staff. If you don't do that, if it's not in writing, it's not in your internal controls, then you're in violation of the regulations for the receipt of federal funding. It's literally in there. And it's also in the self-monitoring document. The self-monitoring document, we're in the operations section. It said there's 11 sections. One of them is on operation. That whole section, and one of the questions in there is, do you keep up? Do you provide professional development in the form of continuing education or whatever to your employees? And you better answer that yes, and have something to back it up, a policy or procedure, an internal control, and actual professional development opportunities there for people to take advantage of. And it's also a weakness because of the obvious, because without professional development, it leads to lack of efficiency, it leads to internal problems, it leads to about everything above it, on this list here. So keeping people educated, informed, and providing professional education is not only an ideal situation, it's required. So a lack of is a problem. So quiz, little quiz. I'll do this with you. It's not something you have to do yourself. Don't worry about it. But just a little question here regarding internal weaknesses. Let's walk our way through it. You can answer the questions to yourself. All organizations should have policies and procedures, yes or no? Second one, policies and procedures should be written down. You can say internal controls should be written down, and or policies and procedures should be written down. Third one, anyone can write a good policy and procedure. The next one, most policies and procedures are written after something happens, usually something bad. The best way, the last one, the best way to be legally safe is to not write anything down. Okay. What do you think the answers are? Since I don't have a slide for it, let's go through. All organizations should have policies and procedures. I think you'll all agree with me that the answer is yes. It's required. You got to have policies and procedures. You got to have internal controls that are in effect policies and procedures. Policies and procedures should be written down. Yes, they should. Not only should they be written down, they should be reviewed on a regular basis to make sure that they are appropriate and efficient, and they are attuned with what's happening with your operation. Third one, anyone can write a good policy and procedure. I'm going to say a qualified yes to that. Anyone can write a good policy and procedure if they have professional development, if they have the appropriate training and, perhaps coached or whatever. Good policies it's learned behavior to be able to write. It's a different type of writing skill, as I mentioned before. Writing internal policies and procedures and internal controls is very different than writing a grant narrative. One is technical, one is like writing an owner's manual, and the other is writing a passionate story. It's a storybook. So there's two different writing styles, but it can be done by anybody. Most policies and procedures are written after something happens. Unfortunately, the answer to that is yes. A lot of times policies and procedures are written after something bad or relatively bad happens, and it becomes noticeable and something has to be put in place. And usually it's after the fact, and usually it could have been avoided if things would have been thought through, regulations would have been read over and understood. That's why I'm encouraging you, a little encouragement to take the grants management course. Join me next week where we talk more about internal controls and the regulations after we get the grant award. Okay, not preliminary, not just an understanding of them, but actually be able to use it. That's what we're doing next week. So if you want to get into deeper level of internal controls, policies, and procedures as it relates to federal funding, join me next week. The last one, best way to be legally safe is not to write anything down. Well, that's a big fat no. That's a hard no. You want to protect yourself and protect the program by writing these down. and be uniform in the way that you write down your internal controls, your policies and procedures. So uniformity, consistency, knowledge of what your weaknesses are, your strengths and weaknesses are, understanding the federal regulations, understanding all of that, and taking the time to not only write them and make sure that they're up to speed, but review them on a regular basis and enforce them or work with your organization to make sure that they are enforced. Because I'll give you a little hint if you've never gone through this before. When the auditor comes in, I mentioned before audits, you want to do the self-monitoring because auditors at some point, program reviews, auditors are going to come in, they're going to look at your program, and the very first thing they're going to ask for is a copy of your internal controls. Right out of the gate, they're going to ask for your policies and procedures. Okay. They're going to want them. They're going to want to see them in writing, whether you have them electronically or in hard copy or both. They're going to ask for a copy of it. Then they're going to look over it, and then they're going to go through their auditing process and compare what you do to what's in your internal controls and your policies and procedures. And they're going to be looking for discrepancies. Okay. So it behooves us to understand the big picture here. Even as grant writers, it behooves us to understand, well, how the organization works, where our strengths and weaknesses are, where our internal controls are. Like my executive director used to say at the Native Learning Center, I know Crystal and Lewis and Alisa will nod their head at this. She always said, yeah, let's take a look at this particular program or project, but let's look at it as if we were auditors. What would the auditors say if we did this? Always keep in mind who is looking at your program, and this applies to grant writers. Who's looking at your program? Who's reading your program or narrative? Who has a vested interest in the operation of your program? That's going to be the auditors. That's going to be the funding donors. That's going to be your leadership. All of this, folks, ties together. All right. Best way to be legally safe is not write anything down. No, hard no. Write it down. Make sure that it's in a policy procedure format, at least and be consistent with it and know where your strengths and weaknesses are and understand that internal controls need to be reviewed on a frequent basis to make sure you don't have internal weaknesses or that they can be recognized and mitigated and fixed. External opportunities that we may or may not have the ability to change or tap into, but they're out there. Rapid growth, new products or services or features or benefits that we can tap into by outsiders, increased funding, perhaps increased federal funding that's coming down or that's being legislated or discussed. We might not have any influence over that on a national level, but we hopefully will be the recipient of it. So we need to stay on top of that. Location. The network fell. Hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
I can hear you.
Okay, I can handle breaking up a little bit, but as long as you can hear me, as long as you can see the screen, we're okay. Looks like Crystal got kicked out. If you can hear me, we're going to keep going. So unless I hear otherwise, open up your mic and say something to me, but I'm going to keep going.
You're good.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, to finish up on external opportunities, just look at, I talked about, go back here, I talked about, what was the one I was talking about? Strong economy, right? Towards the middle there, good relationship, professional development, but strong economy. Just a couple winners and losers of it's actually the fiscal year 22 federal budget. You can see that a few organizations are gaining. Transportations, Veterans Affairs, Defense, Homeland Security. If you're doing anything in that area, there's some growth on a national level. Unfortunately, there's some everything else is either even or it's in the negative when it comes to federal funding. The long and short of it is we are the recipients of these battles that are being waged at a federal level. The winners and losers, transportation, homeland security, that's Veterans Affairs. That's great that they got additional funding, but there's a whole lot of other federal agencies that are taking it on the chin that are being cut back or have been for years under prior administrations or whatever. And we're feeling the effects of that. We have no control over that as much as we have control over the weather that's out there right now that's wreaking havoc on our own presentation today. External threats. This is the one that's the scariest of all, the things that we have no control over, but we at least need to understand and how they trickle down into what we're doing as grant writers in the field. A weak economy, locally, statewide, nationally, is going to have an effect on what we do, obviously. The political structure right now on a national level and even in some state levels, as you probably all know, there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of animosity. There's a lot of left side, right side. There's a lot of battles going on, and that trickles down into what we do and what we're trying to accomplish. There's no way around it until things smooth out. We're going to be the recipients of that from a negative standpoint. Perception versus reality. Here's one I just want to hover over just a little bit, and we need to understand this as grant writers. There is a perception out there in the greater philanthropic community. This has become very critical when we start talking about private sector funding. There's a perception out there that all tribal entities have casinos that are rolling in millions of dollars per whatever, and everyone's filthy rich, and all Indian tribes across the country, all 575 federally recognized tribes have casinos, and they don't need federal funding. They don't need it because they have they have casinos that are pouring in money. We all know that's not true, but that is to some extent, that is a perception that is out there in the philanthropic community to some extent. I know there are organizations out there that are trying to change that perception. Native Americans in Philanthropy is one organization that I know of on a national level that's trying to change that perception. But the problem is that perception is real out there in the philanthropic community, and it has created limitations for funding opportunities on the private sector for a lot of tribal entities, because a lot of the organizations are out there, and I'll get there in a little bit more little later on. They're stuck on the fact, a lot of these, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a lot of community foundations, private corporations are stuck on the fact that you need a 501c3 nonprofit charitable status from the IRS to be able to get funding from those organizations. That's not necessarily true. They don't know that tribes automatically, because they're sovereign nations, automatically have nonprofit status. It's a form, IRS refers to it as status, I think it's called 7871. It's basically a nonprofit status. So the long and short of it is, tribal organizations are sovereign nations. They don't necessarily need to have a 501c3 to be a nonprofit. They can, and a lot of TDAGs take advantage of that. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying there's a perception out there in the philanthropic community that tribes don't necessarily need funding in the form of grants because they're all rich. That's not the case. We know that. So there's a battle going on there too, trying to figure out and we are the recipients of that lack of knowledge, trying to, as grant writers, trying to identify grant opportunities and running into some brick walls because there's this perception out there. So enough said on that. Competition, uncertainty, consumer apathy, cost of operation, and decreased funding. Those are all additional external threats that can be debilitating to the organization. And a lot of times we can't change them. Here's some of the losers in that federal funding for, it says 2020 when it's actually 2022. And you can see NASA up at the top, and then working its way down, fiscal year losses in funding, Energy Department, SBA, Treasury, Interior, Education, every department. HUD's right in the middle there with a minus 15% in federal funding. Now, they might have individual programs within the agency that are succeeding, but generally speaking, their overall funding is diminishing.
Excuse me, Vince.
Yeah,
The only slide I'm seeing is external threats.
Agreed.
external.
Yeah,
Oh, you're saying this?
yes. No, there we go.
How about that?
Now
Oh, you just-
I'm seeing this, but the other slide I didn't see. So bring it back to the other slide that you were talking about.
This one, loss of funding. You can't see that one?
No, there we go.
There
Okay.
we go.
Thank
All
you.
right, I can visually tell you what it is. It's the losers, so to speak, the agencies that are losing funding as a whole. NASA at the top with white minus 1%, all the way down to EPA with minus, I'm going to call it 30% in their federal funding. The point I have it up here is all of those agencies, NASA, Energy, SBA, Treasury, Interior, Education, HUD, et cetera, all of them on a federal level are losing money, and that has a trickle-down effect to us that we have absolutely no control over it. It's referred to as sequestration. Sequestration. It's the legislated reduction of funding across the board for all agencies, not particular programs that might be successful within a given agencies, but federal agencies in general are receiving less and less funding, and that has a trickle down effect on everything that we do. So it's no wonder we struggle in trying to get funding, both on a national level, regional and state level, when all of these agencies are struggling to get funding. This slide, this matrix here is just a capture of all of everything from left to right, internal strengths, internal weaknesses. You can see my list. I'm sure you have others to add to it. And on the right side of the screen, you should see the column for external opportunities and external threats. So this is something see if I have it here. Yeah, this is something that you need to do yourself. So I'll leave this one up just for a minute for you to look at it. This is the process that you kind of need to go through. It doesn't have to be this comprehensive. It doesn't have to be this big in scope. It can be done on a personal level, on a department level, on a tribal level, on a TDHE level to try to figure out, at least this is a good practice to go through if everyone will be honest with each other to figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are and where your external opportunities are and your external threats. And try to use that as a management tool to be able to get a better understanding how your organization operates. So that is the SWOT analysis. Hopefully my slides are progressing. And we're going to move into the next section, and that is a little bit more on the logic model. I talked about it earlier. Let me go to the next slide here. This is what we looked at earlier. We looked at a very simple version of this. This is a little more comprehensive, but it's the same thing. It's the same process. What you should see is 4 bullets at the top left. First one, define a major initiative. Remember, I talked about that. You got to have your organization, your leadership, your community has to agree upon some kind of major initiative or series of initiatives so you know what you're pursuing. The next step, the next bullet, is to be able to break the initiative down into measurable goals, whether it's 1 goal or 100. Probably closer to 100 for some bigger projects, but you've got to be able to break things down. That's what I call goals. All right. Every goal needs to have some kind of measurable outcome and measurable result. Otherwise, it's not a goal. If you can't measure it using this system, it's not a goal. This is something grant writers need to wrap their heads around. Looking at the bottom, the matrix from left to right, you can see it duplicates the bullets above. Bottom left, the initiative. My example here, major focus area or project or program area. To the right of that, goal. SMART goal, to be specific. SMART being the acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. If it's not any of the, hopefully it's all of those. If it's not any of those, then it's not a goal. It's probably just a wish. So a goal is only a goal if it's in sync with the initiative and it's measurable. Not only measurable, but look at the next column, outcome, specifically measurable. Somehow you've got to be able to translate that goal into some kind of outcome, whether it's how many people you were reached or attended, how many participate, or how many events will occur, or a timeline. Remember, we were talking earlier about in the medical question that came up before. It was more, the outcome was more a time, it'll be done in 6 months. How many medical practitioners will be identified in a 6-month period? That was the outcome. And it's a good one based on the initiative and the goal. Every goal needs an outcome in the short term and then some kind of measurable change in the organization or in the project, a result. What is the change? Increase or decrease? And there's a couple examples there. What percentage of improvements will be achieved? That's just an example. Or what percentage of increase or decrease will be achieved? Remember, I said that might be a decrease if it's something like teen pregnancy, or if it's something like methamphetamines, on the use of methamphetamines on the reservation, or human trafficking. We want to see a decrease in that. So that percentage would be reflective of a change that is a decrease. Where on the other hand, if it's infrastructure or housing units or something positive, then we're looking for results that are an increase or level or increase. So this, and again, this is a simplified version of it. Let's take it to a real example here, another scenario. Same concept, different product. Major initiative, in this case, education, but very specifically, the enhancement of academic proficiencies for youth. So the major initiative is trying to increase academic proficiencies for kids. Specifically, goal number 1 with enhanced academic proficiencies as a major initiative, the goal would be increase academic performance levels specifically in grades 3 through 5 in school year 22, current year we're in right now. A hypothetical goal, but it's very specific and it's in sync with the major initiative. The outcome is also hopefully in sync with that specific goal. If we're going to increase academic performance levels for grades 3 through 5 this year, then the outcome has got to be something measurable. And at the time, when we were thinking about this, my hypothetical project team, we came up with an outcome of 30 students would be exposed to enhanced reading, math, and integrated math. That's very specific, a specific outcome based on that goal. And then the result, as you can see to the far right bottom, the result is an increase, a very optimistic increase of academic performance rates to 60% of expected proficiencies. Can you see how this all ties together? This all ties together with this major initiative. Major initiative was very nebulous and big and global and nebulous. Enhance academic proficiencies. That's a very broad goal initiative, very broad in scope. So let's break this down into baby steps. Goal number 1, let's take a look at those early, very low level grades, 3 through 5. We could have put K through 2 in there as well. And maybe that's another goal. And 6 through 9 and 10 through 12, etc. Those would be goals number 2, 3, and 4. Each of those with their own outcome, each of those with their own results, which may be a little different than what you see in this example. So before I get into the next screen, I want to show you, or what I want to tell you is, again, different product, same concept. take this logic model process and apply it to whatever major initiative you're dealing with, either hypothetically or real. You know, you must, someone, like we were talking before, the major initiative was a health initiative. Well, we can plug in what the major initiative is to perhaps increase healthcare for elders. I forgot what it was actually, but you've got to be able to, and the goal number one was to recruit technicians, specific technicians within a certain period of time. So it applies there. It also can apply to the scenario of infrastructure. It can apply to the initiative of building homes or renovating homes. It can also apply to the multifaceted training facility that I'm multimedia community center that I gave before. Different products, same concept. This is how we're going to take our logic, to take our narrative to the next level with grants. We've got to be able to take whatever initiative we have, teen pregnancy, meth, infrastructure, rehab of homes, community center, academic proficiencies. We've got to be able to take any of those initiatives or all of those initiatives and break each one of them down into goals that are measurable and attainable. Probably several goals for each one of those major initiatives, since the initiatives are so broad. All right, same thing applies. Now, if we were talking about strategic planning, we go to the next slide here. I want to show this to you. All this is taking this slide for this current year and pushing it out into subsequent years, 20, as you can see at the top there in blue, school year 23, 24, 25. What we've created here using the current school year, enhanced academic proficiencies, and there's that column, school year 22 is our
Vince,
goal.
Sorry, the slide isn't progressed. We don't see the multiple years. There we go.
Okay. Okay, you heard, hopefully you heard what I said.
Yes.
What I've done is I've taken that year, school year 22, and just pushed it out, all right, to give you an idea. Now, if you were doing strategic planning, this would be the foundation of being able to take this particular initiative and the one goal that you've assigned to it and push it out into subsequent years, whether it's academic proficiencies or whether it's any of the other major initiative theoretical things that I gave you. The school year, fiscal year 22 column, that is the previous slide, just put in a vertical stack. But you can see I've pushed things out into 23, 24, and 25 to show you how things are progressing into higher academic levels, and everything increases. Look at the numbers there. They all increase. Now, if everything remained the same, this is an economics term, if everything remains the same, you could project something like this and you could go in perpetuity, you know, out 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But we live in a real world where not all of our initiatives and goals specifically come to fruition. They don't always succeed, even with the best of intentions. So what does that do to our projections here in school year 23, 24, and 25? If we cannot meet the expectations by the end of school year 22, what does it do to subsequent years? It changes everything, doesn't it? It would change everything. That's why what I tell grant writers is understanding the concept of the logic model. The logic model process here that you're seeing, the prior slide, which was a glance at one fiscal school year, or this slide, which is multiple years. Question? Okay. Is multiple years, is a living document. It's a living process because things change. So what I'm saying is when we do our logic model for anything, whether it's for a grant or this process for strategic planning, whatever the purpose is, it's adaptable. The logic mental process is adaptable for any of those purposes, but it's also flexible, and it's going to change because nothing remains the same. You know, it changes. Maybe in that column, school year 22, which we were all gung ho about this current year, what if we're not able to increase levels in grades 3 through 5? Maybe we were only successful in grades 3 through 4, or just grade 3. What does that do to school year 23, 24, and 25? It changes everything. It changes the whole dynamic of that, and it changes all the projections. So what I'm saying here is this is a good practice. We need to understand how this works, how it works in grant writing, because it helps us to understand where we are going and how we are going to measure the success of our program. But we also have to keep in mind, in the back of our mind, that things change and we have to be adaptive. We have to understand that if we don't meet our targets as accurate as we thought they would be, it's going to have repercussions all the way across the board. So the farther we push out our expectations, the more we set ourselves up for change. So this is a wonderful skill to have, and you can apply it, different products, same process. You can apply it to different, hopefully you'll see, I just progressed the slide into a different project. And this one, or a new initiative, this one is creating a vocational training facility. Hopefully you can see that. And at the top remains the same, but the bottom, look, it's a different product we're talking about now. We're talking about building a facility. And a facility is bricks and mortar. It's a different concept than education, obviously. So there's going to be different goals that are assigned to it, which makes sense. So you can see on the far left that the initiative is a facility plan. You can see plan is highlighted. Plan a new vocational training facility. That in itself is going to have a series of goals, of small goals. Just the planning process, right? Where you've got community involvement, you've got architects, you've got engineers, you've got earth movers, you've got all of those things I talked about before. Your goal is going to be different. So perhaps for this situation, for this initiative, the first goal out of many would be conduct 6 planning sessions within the school year or fiscal year 22. If you're able to pull off all 6, then hopefully the outcome would be 60 community members will be exposed to plans. And the result would be, after that's done, that the community involvement would increase by 50%. Those are wonderful projections, but they're just that, they're projections. I'm really hoping that what you're seeing here with the prior slide with the education and now with this one with planning is that we're using the logic model process in grant writing to help us predict where we're going to be with our grant. And it's the application, assuming we're awarded, the application of our grant next month, 6 months, 9 months, a year, or even farther out. This process, this simplistic version here of the logic model, helps us to understand how to get from point A to point B, and to be able to measure our progress at any given time. That's what auditors are looking for. That's what program reviewers are looking for. That's what self-monitoring does or helps with. So different products, same concept. Here's a different look at it. Here's the major initiative. It's still facility, but now it's the design part. Now, design is different than planning. Now we're going into our goal here would be different from our first goal. This goal is something different because we're dealing with design, not planning, but with the actual design. So there's going to be a process here that's going to focus more with architects and GCs and engineers, right? Not just planning this all. Now we're getting into the actual function. So the goals are different, but they still need to follow the process. Here, the outcomes are different, and the result is going to be different. So we talked about planning of the facility, we talked about design. Now, the next phase of a major facility would most likely be the actual bricks and mortar, and that would be the construction. And that brings its own series of goals related to actual construction from a general earth movers, general contractors, the subs coming in. You've got building phases that go through beginning phase, mid phase, end phase. The outcome here hopefully would be phase one would be completed within a certain period, within school year 24, that's site preparation. And phase two, laying of the foundation, would also be at least prepped or completed within that. Can you see how the logic model is using different facilities, different goals, different outcomes, but the process remains the same? All right.
Wonderful.
And four would be getting into more of the construction and then stringing it all together. Here's a look at that whole facility scenario laid out more like a strategic plan. So just laid out horizontally. Top left, the goal that hasn't changed. That is constructing a new, actually that should say, not goal, that should say initiative. Developing the construction of new vocational training, that hasn't changed. Then you can see the column for school year, fiscal year 22, 23, 24, and 25. You can see those columns there and how things are progressing. If any of those components change within those given school years or fiscal years, then all of the other dominoes fall in place, right? That's the logic model process. That's why it's so important that we understand how this logic model process works in developing goals, because it helps us. Here's just another example, different product. This one is vaccination. So now we're looking at healthcare, back to health and social services. Hopefully yep, how's that?
Yeah, sorry, no, you have a couple of questions and I just,
Okay.
before you wanted, before we move on. Clifton, you had your hand raised. If you could go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Yes, thank you. This is awesome on the construction. Just wondering how many goals is usually in a good grant application, sort of like a results program, such as say domestic violence or something to that effect. Like someone was talking about behavioral health earlier. How many goals should be in a application, or is it depend on your strengths and weaknesses? Thanks.
It really does depend on, it's the latter part of what you said there. It depends on everyone's going to be different. There's no rule of thumb of how many goals for an initiative. What you see on the screen are very simplistic examples. I'm using one goal for every major initiative. There could be 100 goals. So it depends. The number of goals depends more on the complexity of the major initiative than it does on anything else. There's really no rule of thumb as to how many goals are required or if there's a best practices for the number of goals. It just depends on how detailed you want to get or need to get and the complexity of the major initiative. Now, the ones that I've been showing you are relatively complex. They're different areas, right? They're different initiatives. This one's in healthcare that you see on the screen. The other one's construction. The one before that was education. They're all complex in their respective categories, but some are more complex than others because they might have more moving parts. It just might be more complex. So the number of goals doesn't really matter as much as the process, that each goal is logical, attainable, measurable, and that it has, as you see on the screen here, an outcome that matches up with it and a result that matches up with it. That's really what we're looking for here. It's not so much the number of goals, it's that each goal is well thought out, it's measurable, attainable, and it has measurable and attainable outcomes and results. I hope that makes sense. It's more the process than it is a certain number of goals assigned to a given initiative.
Yeah,
I'm
so
just giving a neat, that
so
help?
a lot of it is mainly on input from maybe community members or administration of what they want to accomplish, and then write them
Yes,
down.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What they
Okay.
think is important. We get our marching orders from, tribal council or the community through the tribal council. And if they say they want to have a vaccination campaign, then that's what we're going to do. and we're gonna go from there. We're gonna search for funding for that, and we're gonna start it the best we can. If they can't provide it, then we know we're gonna have to somehow break that concept down into measurable goals. And it doesn't matter what the initiative is, we've got to go through that process. So hopefully
Great.
that helps you.
Yes, great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Paulette, I'm sorry, do you remember a question? I know it took a minute.
Sorry, no, that's okay. We can keep going.
Okay, no
Okay.
worries.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, you're good, Vince. You can go ahead and continue.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Okay, and this is the vaccination campaign. I showed you, here's a at a glance for the year, different topic, same process, and here it is pushed out 2 or 3 years, assuming that the initiative and the goal for the fiscal year column, this current column, falls in place and everything's accomplished, then everything else would make sense. If something happens where we're not able to accomplish what we're trying to do in this year, it's going to have repercussions in 23, 24, and 25. So understand that and you're going to have to be able to make those edits, make those changes with this process, or be prepared to do that. When you're putting together your narrative and you're going through this process, know that the logic model does fit a lot of different types of initiatives, right? The logic, different product, same process, but the process only works if everything falls in place. If things don't fall in place, if school year 2022, it says provide 6 vaccination clinics. If you're only able to do 5 or 4 in fiscal year 22, that is definitely going to have effect with the next year and the year after that, and so on. So changes have to be made. That's why I say that these documents, the logic model process, is a kind of a living document. It certainly is a living document when we look at strategic planning. And a strategic plan is no more than taking what we've established for the current year and making adjustments for subsequent years. We call it strategic plan. That sounds much more complicated than what it is. It's really goal development using the logic model process. We can use that for grant writing. We can use it for strategic planning. We can use it for personal development, etc. So, and here's another one. It fits into fiscal operations or financial operations. Different product, same process. The goal here, the initiative says central administration and finance improve fiscal operations. That's a big ask. What do you mean by that, right? That's where our goals come into play. First goal, first goal could be that we have professional training sessions. We know it's a requirement. Let's hold 6 professional training sessions in fiscal year 22. Great goal. That sounds like something that easily could be accomplished for everyone that touches administration and finance. The outcome, you can see, would be that 10 staff people and or board of director members, it's probably a TDHE, will be exposed to financial training. That's great. And the result would be staff and board of director knowledge of financial operations of that TDHE, for example, will increase by 75%. That's wonderful. That's great. Now, if you don't get 6 professional training sessions in, if you only get 5, that's going to change your projections. But this is the logic model process, and you cannot define. So 6 months from now, I come to the person who did this and I say, where are you? We're more than halfway through fiscal year 22. You said you were going to do 6 professional training sessions, which with an outcome of 10 staff. Where are you? We are, it's mid-October, and this went into effect 6 months ago, or more than that, 10 months ago when you started this. Where are you? Well, you might the answer might be we're right on track. We were able to hold 6. Actually, we held 7. We held 7 professional training sessions. Oh, well, that's great. So in tennis, 10 staff people, they got 15. Well, that changes. That's good. That's good. That's good to know because you're able to measure your outcome. And that's what we want to be able to do at any given time. Set ourselves up so that we can measure our outcome anytime, anywhere, for any initiative that has a goal assigned to it. That's what this is. That's what we carry over to our grant writing to be able to do that. Hope that makes sense. Implement, monitor, and evaluate is the next area.
1 second.
I showed you
Vince.
this.
Yes,
Okay.
1 second. Clifton, I don't know, was your hand, did you put your hand up again or was this just? Sorry?
No, I need to take it down, sorry.
Okay, no, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure before we moved on. Thank you. Okay, Vince, sorry.
That was funny. My Siri just answered the question I had. My watch is
Phone?
talking to me.
Is that what that was? I was like, who is that?
That was Siri telling me that she found something on the internet. I'm like, oh, God,
Siri is part of the training, guys and gals.
even Siri's trying to help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a good place. This is what we're going to try to do. We have, hopefully you can see this. And Crystal, I know you're going to get involved in this. This is where we're going to do the first work activity. Okay.
Yes.
We're going to try basically to take the information that I presented this morning and through this afternoon so far to try to identify if either hypothetically or if you have a real example, a major objective within your organization, and then break it down into needs and benefits and project team and resources, kind of everything we talked about this morning. So Crystal, did you have some talking points on this?
Not really talking points, but
Okay.
here, if you don't mind, I'm going to do the screen takeover. I'm going to share
Okay.
now.
Okay. I should stop sharing.
Hold on. Because I've got lots going on here. Hold on 1 second. So I'm fancy. I've got 2 monitors. Let's see,
Right.
window. Here we go. Okay, can we see this, folks?
Yeah,
Yes,
I see it.
yes, I see it.
Okay, perfect. So it should say grants writing activities, activity 1, defining the major objective. So if you click the link for materials, essentially what you're going to find is a worksheet that's titled Workshop Activities Grant Writing, and that's where we are right now. So Vince went over, basically the SWOT analysis process, talking about all the factors that are involved within it. But with that being said, essentially what we're trying to do here is get all of you to apply what it is that you've learned in the last few hours from early this morning until now, essentially. And so if you can take a moment and go to that webpage, download the worksheet, because this is intended for you to utilize now and in the future. It's meant as kind of like a template to really break down the process, essentially. And so with that, the instructions are simply using your team's assigned scenario, complete the following activities, and be prepared to share out. Vince, did we want to do group activities? Like group?
If we have time, I'm not quite sure we're going to have time to be able to break it up into groups. What do you think? I mean,
And there are like a good 70 something of you in the room. And I believe we
Yeah.
only have I believe 3 scenarios. So how about this? As a group, we can go over scenario number 1.
Yeah.
And we can have the participants come up with the ideas for the objectives, the needs, the benefits, the beneficiaries, project team. How's that sound?
That sounds good. That
Okay,
sounds
so,
good.
okay, great. So can you do me the favor? Because all I can see right now is the worksheet itself.
Great.
And I can type into it. So I'll be the
Okay.
typer. I'll be the so and so
No, we can
forth.
talk our way through it.
Yeah, we can
And
talk our way
talk
through it, and I'll go ahead and plug in all the ideas and so on and so forth. So if you can do me the favor, though, of pulling up the case study or the scenario that you provided, and then we can get going.
Okay. Want to do a case study, or since we have so many people in the room, maybe we can just walk through this and give examples. How's that?
Sure, that works.
You can do that. How about that, folks? We'll just give examples of it and you kind of see where we're coming from. And I'll use a case study as an example. How's that? And we'll do so you can see what we're talking about here. Let's see. I got case study 1, which is a nonprofit organization and their treatment programs. Case study 2 is a nonprofit organization serving seniors. And case study 3 is a public or private school. Their mission is to educate the whole child. So we could use any one of these as our, why don't we use
Why don't we
the
put it up for a vote?
nonprofit, what's that? Put it up
I
for
was
a
gonna
vote?
say, why
Okay.
don't we include, yeah, let's put it up for a vote. So, 1, 2, or 3 for case study 1, 2, or 3. You put that in the chat, and then Oyster, you can let me know what the participants have decided. So I believe the first case study was a nonprofit, right, Vince?
Nonprofit providing treatment programs to reduce physical domestic violence in the community.
And then case study
Case
2
study
was,
number 1. Case study 2 is another nonprofit organization, which could be a TDHE. So, no, not really. No, not in this case. I'm sorry. A nonprofit organization serving seniors to provide nutrition to seniors residing independently. That's the second scenario. And the third scenario or third case study is a public or private school designed to educate the whole child that lives in the family unit.
all right,
And the
so,
dealing case study 3 deals with childhood obesity and a sedentary lifestyle.
So
What are-
far, we have
Mhm.
8 people saying case number 1.
Okay,
It looks like some people are still voting, but so far, number 1 is by far the most votes.
okay,
Oh, which would be a nonprofit organization providing treatment programs to reduce physical domestic violence in the community. All right,
beautiful.
that's it. That is the objective would be to reduce domestic violence in the community, right? It's a nonprofit organization providing treatment programs or create treatment programs that reduce physical domestic violence in the community. I think that's what case study 1 objective is. So box A, that's what would be put in there.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go slower.
Yep. Create treatment programs to reduce physical domestic violence in the community. Now, the
Beautiful.
community could be anything, and we're just leaving it open-ended, on you as the participant in your analysis, you probably want to be more specific than that, hopefully. Hopefully your leadership or your community would be a little more specific, but it could be just as broad as that. That's very broad. To create treatment programs to reduce physical domestic violence in the community. Okay, perhaps this is what the community is telling you that is important. That's important to them. There could be other things, but that's one of them, right? So that's what we're going to work with. So we're done there. That describes what we're
objective.
trying to, the major objective.
Right. How about
Now,
we let
next-
the participants let us know what they think the need is?
So this is what I do for a living.
Ah, beautiful. I love that.
And one of the things that I am finding in our grant writing and the way it's written is that there is no group activities or no education to put out there for anger management. The signs of domestic violence, and then also it takes at least 7 times for a victim to leave their perpetrator. And if you could educate them on codependency and seeking safety, those things will help in them to not to keep going back and getting beat. So usually what happens with the perpetrator is that their victim will leave, or their victim tries to leave, and they're controlling their money and so on, all aspects of their lives. So if they contact us, we need to help them to start putting in place how to leave their perpetrators, and then not to go back to their perpetrators.
Okay, so with that information, Vince, what are your thoughts?
I'm thinking, when it comes to need is the ability to break the cycle of abuse,
Yes.
break the cycle of abuse. And that's definitely a need. Look, and abuse is open-ended. In front of abuse, should there be more defining words like domestic abuse,
Well,
elder?
there's partner abuse, which is considered domestic abuse. There's also child abuse too. There's all of
Right,
those in
yeah.
there. And
Okay.
if you look at all the statistics that come out of all the studies, you will see that in most violent domestic relationships, there is also drug and alcohol abuse involved in that. So that's another piece or a caveat that needs to be put in there, is that needs to be addressed too. So,
So
and also,
substance abuse.
yeah, substance abuse. And then also sometimes what will happen is that the victim, because they feel that they aren't worthy or whatever their mindset is that they will also become abused to the drugs and alcohol to join in and to make their partner feel more comfortable around them.
Oh, gotcha.
Coercion.
So this is also an area where you would put in some statistical information that you had
Mhm.
mentioned some stats a moment ago, but this is also when you're talking about the need, you want to show, what, for example, what portion or percentage of the population is being affected by any one of these abuse situations. And you had some statistics that you mentioned a moment ago that might be.
It takes 7
Um,
times for a victim to leave their perpetrator.
Okay.
So that's important to know. I don't have the other statistics right offhand of
Right.
what the recidivism is of them going back and forth. I
Yeah,
can
to
tell
prison.
you
Yeah.
I can tell you from our program, we have had at least a 50% success rate in keeping the victims from going back to the perpetrators.
Okay, I think that 50% you just quoted would go down into item C,
Okay.
Benefits. Yeah.
the benefit, because you just mentioned as success.
Yeah.
So we're gonna save that comment, but where Crystal is right now in B, describe the need, that's where we're trying to paint the picture here of a need within the community, and this is also where we can use statistical information to show to our advantage somehow where that the problem exists using statistical information as well, or reports, or
So
information on a national level, on a regional level, on a tribal level.
approximately 90%, could be a little bit more. My statistics could be off. Like I said, I don't have them in front of me. Of domestic violence, elder abuse, child abuse is also involved substance use. Also,
Yeah.
What else we have found along in that is that it's passed down generationally. It's a generational trauma and a historical trauma through the tribal institutions or communities, because it's a learned behavior and it makes it okay.
Interesting.
May I just ask
that-
the person who has the experience in this, of the perpetrators, what's the percentage of employed versus non-employed?
A lot of them are employed.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
what we found that a lot of them are employed, and so when they are employed, that's how they control the victim is by financially, because they won't give them any money, so and they won't let them go work, so they're kind of like stuck in a cycle that they have no way of leaving. So that's what our program does, is we get them out of the situation and help them with housing. We help them with what their immediate needs are.
Right, that what you just said, that's going to go into the C, the way, the benefits and how you help them. I think we got enough here. I think you see what we've got here. You're describing inaccurate, vivid description using some statistical information, what the need is, and it's real. It's very, very real. And you've described that. That's the need. Now the next section gets into some of the benefits. And some of who the beneficiaries are. Obviously, the abusee is going to get some kind of, and maybe the abuser gets in your program, gets some kind of help, anger management, or rehabilitation of some kind. But this is where we want to try. This is where you could put in some benefits of positive things that come from it.
So where it again is what I see is a lack of needs in the program that I am in charge of right now, is that we aren't offering the victims because we can't offer the perpetrator. What we can do is that we can give referrals, and that's about all we can do. We can't, because once they are in our program, they are completely protected from the perpetrator unless they tell us that they would like him to go, that they would try to like to mend the relationship because there's like a family there, and try to make it work and see if that perpetrator would like to go to and to like any kind of outreach programs as far as like substance use or healthy families or healthy fathers or anger management, those type of things we can offer them, and that's only if the victim asks us of that.
So Crystal, in section C is where you want, she just described all the wonderful benefits. Protection is provided for the victim at least in the short term, and with the victim's involvement in some of the decision making.
Most
And it sounds
definitely.
like,
Yes, the
yeah.
victim is always involved in their case planning, always. And
Okay,
we
that's
also,
the word I'm looking for. Case planning. Yeah, victim involved in case planning.
and we also help in any judicial papers or going to court with them. We help file the papers or do restraining orders for them, ROs.
Okay, yeah. Okay, and you also said something about education or for the fathers too, or for
Yes. So if
referrals.
yes, we do referrals. If the victim wants to try to keep the family together.
Yeah, cool. Again, that's victim involvement in the case planning.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great. See where we're going with this so far?
yes,
Okay. Now, those are good examples of A, B, and C, objectives, need, benefits, and beneficiaries. Now we can go on to D, which is who would be or what, who is in the person or what agency or department or firm would be on your project team if you were searching a grant? Who, do you have someone in the local police force, for example, that might be involved, with you as a partner?
well, we used the Department of Health and Human Services
Okay.
with them for our county and our outlining, because my tribe is the Tolowa tribe, and we go from Del Norte County to Josephine County to Curry County, which are all in Coos County, which are all in the Northern California and Southern Oregon part of California. So
Okay.
we collaborate with them. We also collaborate with rape victim services. So we collaborate with them. We also collaborate. We also collaborate.
You're good.
We also collaborate with the Yurok tribe, which is another tribe in our area. We collaborate with them. So we
Okay.
can, if there's, if, because what happens is that there's intermarital tribes. So like if they're in a Tolowa tribe or the Yurok tribe, we might have a registered Yurok member who's married to a Tolowa tribe, and we can serve them. So yeah, that's how that works.
Gotcha. Good examples. There's part of your project team right now that are outside of the organization. And I'm sure you have folks inside the tribe that are also part of your project team. And I would
Yes.
imagine
We
not just
have
you,
we
but
have the tribal council. It's one. We have to answer to our tribal council, and also I have.
well, the tribal council is going to be your authoritative. That's the one that gives you authority. But I mean, there might be individuals within their different departments, maybe that would help.
Yes, I have. So TANF, I have TANF.
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
social services.
NC.
I have AOD.
Okay.
Okay. And I personally oversee 4 domestic violent advocates.
It's okay. These are great. Okay, there's your project team. Now, the tricky one is down below, resources and leverage. Yeah, you kind of mentioned some of the resources already, and that is some of the departments that you're collaborating with. There are also resources, right? Department of Health and Human Services, for example.
Yes.
The rape victim services. Those are all also resources and leveraging.
Yes.
Opportunities. Yeah. And everything you've mentioned above, almost everything. The other tribes, the Yurok tribe, that's also a resource and a leveraging opportunity because of intertribal marriages. So everything you mentioned in the project team is also a potential resource and potential leverage in one way or another, especially the outside organizations like the Department of Health and Human Services. Their services are invaluable. I don't even know if you could put a dollar amount on what they provide to you, but if you can, that is a leverageable resource for you.
And then also,
go
ahead. Because of where we are located, it also limits our ability to get any kind of like mental health care for our victims and for our perpetrators, because we're in an extremely rural area.
That goes up in the need, Crystal. What she just said, described the need. She said they're remote and they have limited access. That's part of their need. remote location and limited access to mental health services,
Hmm.
right?
Yes, correct.
And other medical services because of
Correct.
that's part of your need. That's part of the struggle. That's part of why you're doing this, why you're searching for a grant, because you're remote, because you have limited access, because there's domestic violence that needs to be, and you have statistical information to back it up. And you just gave me some statistical information on your remoteness too. You said you're so many miles from, what'd you say, 50 miles from?
We're 20 miles from the border of Oregon, the southern border of Oregon, but because Brookings is such a small rural area, also the closest, if we were going to do any kind of mental health, the closest would be in Grants Pass, and that's 120 miles away.
Wow.
Medford is almost 200 miles away. Then if we're going to go down towards the Humboldt area or Santa Rosa or down to the Central Valley area, we're talking like 200 to 300 miles away.
Wow, that's remote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fall, all of that remote location, limited access, that's all part of your need. You know, you're describing why this problem is so difficult to deal with because of your remoteness, because of the scourge of domestic violence and all those other tied together violences. Yep, this is beginning. These are the categories A through E. You put together just in a quick 15-20 minute conversation. You've given examples, excellent examples of the objectives, the need, the benefits as to some of the things that you provide. Also the project team, and you turn the project team basically into your resources and your leveraging as well. And I'm sure you have other things that you can add to all these categories. And I'm hoping everyone can see this as a good example of how they can do the same thing. Just walk through this just like she did. And you have a real example here. This is real. I get that. Some people might not, and they have to come up with a hypothetical situation. I'm glad we used your real world example here instead of a case study to show what's really happening. And I'm sure you have a lot more to tell folks.
It was a bit of a case study, and then it turned into a real life scenario.
Yeah, no, I think this is much better.
That's great. No, that's great. Go ahead.
We're coming up on writing some grants, and my director has asked me to start learning how to do this to take some weight off of her shoulders. So that's why I'm here today.
Beautiful. No, that's great. For my participants that have been, quiet or just listening, can I get a 1 for your understanding, of what we've been kind of working out? 2, if you're still lost, and that's totally okay. That's why we're here, to help you kind of navigate through all of this. So 1 for you're good and you're getting it, grasping it. 2, you're still a little lost. And Awista, if you can let me know what the majority is as well, I'd greatly appreciate that.
So far, only 1, 2, but that is from Patricia, who also has a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Patricia.
Patricia, if you want, you can go ahead and unmute your mic if you would like to say your question.
Or just throw it in the chat.
Well, so in the chat she put, is there a guidance regarding the kind and amount of information is included in a grant so that it is effective and not considered superfluous? Superficious? Yes.
Is there, read that,
Superfluous. I love
read
that
that
word.
again. Is there guidance in
Essentially providing too much information.
Well, that's a real good question. That's getting into the details of the what's referred to as the NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability. All federal grants, in fact, most grants in general, whether they're private sector or federal agencies, have some kind of description. Federal agencies put out what's called a Notice of Funding Availability, referred to as a NOFA. In the NOFA, it's going to give you for lack of better words, the talking points. how much information is needed, how they want to see the information, and how to reply to specific questions. So how much information is too much information is basically, hopefully you'll be able to get that information out of the NOFA to understand what they're looking for. Some of them are very specific. Some of them will tell you, we want X amount of information on specific topics and don't provide more than 500 words or 1,000 words or 2,000 words, whatever it may be, which gives you kind of a gauge as to how much information you need to put in. I always treat it this way. I always go in with, give them the basic facts of what I'm trying to, without too much embellishment. And then if I still have a lot of flexibility, a lot of space, then I can go back and embellish my comments a little bit more. So how much is too much depends on the grant that you're looking at and what the guidelines are. You always want to try to identify the guidelines, if it has any, or if you're in the private sector, if the funder provides you with information, read through it to get an idea of what they're looking for. Sometimes they want short, concise, brief, statistically based information, not a lot of narrative writing. On the other hand, some open up the doors and let you put in, 5,000 words and you can do whatever you want. So, but you've got to look at each opportunity individually and try to identify if they have any stipulations. Hope that gives you some kind of guidance, but there's no real rule of thumb how much is too much.
Thank
I
you.
think-
Yes, it does.
Perfect. And I was just going to add why it makes so much sense that you have to have a really good understanding of your SMART goals, your, all of, your, what's the word? Internal strengths and weaknesses and so on and so forth. And, all of these things have to be very well written because there are going to be situations where in no fos or no fuzz, you are extremely limited on your verbiage and then you're forced to, like Vince said, okay, maybe I only have enough room to leave, the statistical and really straight to the point kind of information. So, that's why having this kind of laid out, I think ahead of time, or where this is really thought out, is going to help you in that writing process.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank
Another
you.
tip is to, take a look at these guidelines that these NOFOs provide, and you want to write a narrative. Good best practice would be to write it in a Word document. Write it out as comprehensive as you want it to be in a Word document that you can store on your desktop, on your laptop, and then once you're done with it and you put down everything you could possibly think of in support of your given project or program, then at that point, you can cut and paste and pull out and manipulate what you need to put into the grant application, if that makes sense. We call that the mother application, creating a Word document that matches up with the grant, but you're going to have to upload documents anyway into the into the grant application. So take the time, write out the narrative using as much language as you want into a Word document that you can always pull apart and manipulate to fit whatever you're trying, fit the box like Crystal has here. I don't know if there's certain word limits on that box or if they expand forever and ever. Some are limited to a word or character count and others are wide open. So you have to be flexible. So how do you deal with that? You create a Word document with all the verbiage that you can pull out, drop in, and then manipulate, or the other way around. Pull it out, create it as a separate document, manipulate it, cut and paste it into your real narrative, and it's just a lot easier. You never want to put yourself in a situation where you're trying to compose, like Crystal did right here, compose your verbiage off the fly, off the cuff. You'll be timed out. a lot of these online applications you only have X amount of time. So really you're uploading everything. You're not creating on the actual document, in live time. You want to have a document that you can pull things from and drop in. So as Crystal said, you need to be familiar with the NOFA. You need to be familiar with the questions you're asking. Then separately create that Word document narrative where you've created it. You put in everything you can possibly think of to support in support of it, and then pick and choose sections of it to manipulate and drop in so it fits perfectly within the unique NOFA that you're dealing with. Hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't ever put yourself in a situation where you're composing
In the
in
middle.
real time
Of
on an
applying, yeah.
application.
You don't
Yeah,
want to do that. You need to have everything ready ahead of time so that when you're ready to
Yeah.
submit, you're just plugging everything in essentially.
Yeah,
No
basically.
comment, but thank you.
You're welcome. And something that's cool about this document is that yes, you can set it to have certain character limits. So depending on, your funding or what it is that you're applying for, you can kind of, while you're getting the practice for it or whatever it may be, while you're preparing for it, you can write in these boxes. And if you're over a certain amount of characters, then obviously we need to cut down on some of the language or narrative that's written in there.
And that's a situation you don't want to be in when you're composing.
Right.
So you want to try to avoid that at all costs.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Crystal, I have a thought here. We are at a quarter after, or nearly quarter after the hour. I'm thinking, you let me know, or the team, everyone, we take a break here for 15 minutes, and then we come back and then we get into section 3,
Sure.
which is the actual narrative writing part.
Yeah. You have
And
2
spend
hands
our
up
time.
though. You've got 2
Yes.
hands up.
I was just about to say, Clifton does have a question in the chat that I can read off to you, and then we
Sure.
still have 1 hand up.
Okay.
Okay, so Clifton in the chat said, does leveraging go towards cost sharing if we build the parking lot for the construction of a grant-funded building? Does the parking lot go towards the cost share?
It can. It possibly could. I don't know the parameters of the grant, but you can leverage just about anything. If the parking is going to be used as part of the process and there's a value you can assign to that, then there's a good potential. Look at the grant narrative of the NOFA and see, if that's something that's allowable. But from my standpoint, I'd say a qualified yes, it could be part of the leveraging if you can put a value on it. If you can put a value on anything, it can be used as leverage. So keep that in mind. But you have to go with what's stated on the NOFA, and if they're willing to accept that. If all parties are willing to accept it. I don't know who owns the parking lot, but you follow what I'm saying. Qualified, yes, you can do that, but you need to be careful who's responsible and can it be used in the grant. Okay. What else do you have?
Corazon
Lisa.
has a hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself. And let us know. Hand raised. Yes, Kathleen, I do notice Vince is cutting in and out. Corazon, did you have a question? Did you want to go ahead and unmute yourself or throw your question in the chat? All right. How are we doing, folks? Are we getting it? Are we enjoying it? 1 for yes, 2, you guys stink. 1. Oh, well, at least no 2s yet. 1, awesome. Thank you.
Good.
Louis, really quick, did you get Suzanne Tharp?
Yes.
Beautiful, thank you. And Clifford, are we completing the study before moving on? One. Oh, you're enjoying it. The study. Oh, no, well, we finished the first activity, Clifford. The next part is the narrative. So Vince is going to be going over the material for that, what you would need to understand, and then we jump into the exercise. Am I right in saying that, Vince?
You are correct.
Beautiful.
You are correct. That'll be the last thing we do is the activity, which includes everything I'm about to say.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically we're going to be building on what we just did. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, you are correct.
Beautiful. Look at me. I'm getting this whole grant writing thing, Vince.
Oh, yes. You're
It's
good.
as if if I had this drilled into me for the last 6 8 years.
Yeah.
By someone who used to be our compliance director.
You got it. You're a rock star. And ready when you are.
Learn from the best. Learn from the best. Okay. I'm ready. Go ahead and kick it off.
All right. We are in the last section of what we're doing today. And basically we finally got to that point where we're actually going to take everything that we've accumulated over the past 6 hours and put it into, hopefully, put it into the actual narrative. And I really believe that you need to have these skill sets and understand these big picture ideas to be able to put together a narrative that's more than just you relying on your writing skills. You want to have, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's a lot of wonderful people out there that can sit down and write things from scratch without doing or having any type of preliminary information. But these are some of the best tips, best things to do that I have found over the years in doing it myself, and both in with federal agencies, with the Indian Housing Block Grant, and with other funding, and on the private side of doing it, and with working with colleagues across Indian country, and before that with other colleagues across the United States in doing this. So that's the whole idea. And we're getting to my favorite part here, and that's actually putting these things together in a cohesive description. So I'm going to get in that, describe to you in the best that I can all the components of the actual narrative, knowing what we know already, and then give you some tips on actual writing skills and talk about the difference between grant writing and technical writing. I've alluded to it a little bit. There is a difference between technical writing and persuasive writing, which is what grant writing is. But I want to show you some information and show you that so you have a better understanding. So let's get started here. You know what the course description is. We're at the bottom of the screen here. We've gone through everything, and we're going to do the strong grant narrative, or at least try to. Here's another look at the same thing, the grant cycle we are on. We've already circled around. We're coming back up. We're in the far left there, organized writing and packaging the proposal. Packaging's easy. The writing is hard. That's what we're trying to make as easy as possible by having all these skills at our disposal and resources at our disposal to put it together. Because I know that not everyone likes to write, these narratives, handwrite, on their keyboard, whatever, not everyone excels at that. So we want to minimize the pain as much as possible and make it as user friendly as possible. So what I'm about to tell you is right here. These are the 7 parts of the grant narrative that we're going to break down and give some examples to. And then you're going to do it as part of your group activity at the end of this session. Basically this. And these are the 7 components. The summary actually outlines everything, outlines the organization and the project. It's usually, you usually find this at the beginning of the grant application, but I think you'll agree from, your memory of doing term papers in high school and different projects in college and writing things like that, that the summary really comes together at the end. Because by the time you get to the end, you've done all the other components that are part of the narrative. This is no different. Even though the summary is usually the very first thing, sometimes it's called an executive summary, sometimes it's called an overview, but it's basically the summary of everything. I recommend, if possible, doing it last because it tends to capture all the other components, puts them together, and it's hard to do the summary in advance. It's hard to tell the reader what you're going to write about when you really haven't put it all together yet. So my recommendation, if it's possible, is to do the summary last after you've done all these other, at least most of these other components, so that you have all the moving parts assembled. So we talked earlier, and the last example that we did, a group activity that we did, we had some of these things involved, like the statement of need. The statement of need needs to be clear, concise, well-supported statement of the issue. What is the problem? What is the issue? You need to be able to provide the words that describe what the problem is. This is not the section where you give results or where you give answers. This is where you tell the issue. My tip, even though sometimes we're working with things that are negative, like teen pregnancy or like abuse situations that we had a beautiful example of, we want to make sure that in our statement of need that we are clear and concise. We are not giving anecdotal information. We are not giving hearsay. We are giving well-supported information. There's nothing wrong with putting statistical information in your statement of need. As we were bantering back and forth, we were talking about some of the statistics that support the situation, that support the problem. What's happening globally, what's happening nationally, what's happening from a statistical standpoint, what's happening statewide, tribal-wide, any statistics that are legitimate that can support your position. This is the place to put them in your statement of need. The other thing we want to be careful of in this statement of need is to not paint a picture that is so desperate, so gloom and doom that it reads like there's no solution to it. We want, and that's a little bit of art and science combined. You want to make sure that your statement of need conveys the sense of urgency, that there's an issue, a problem, or a concern, or a project out there that is worthy of your time and energy, and of the investors. Remember, the investors' time and energy and good money. We want to make sure they agree with it. So this is not the place to use hyperbole. This is where we want to be concise, well-supported narrative with statistical information that is clearly states the need and the issue. Okay, enough on that. The next part we talked about extensively, the initiatives and the goals. What is the initiative as mandated to you by your leadership? What is it? And what are the goals associated with it? What are the SMART goals, the realistic, tangible, measurable goals, and their outcomes and results, right? To one extent or another, this is typically a section where you're going to describe initiatives and goals and outcomes and results. Some grant applications give you space where you can get into that level of detail. Others don't. Others just limit you, and you have to be able to have that information so that you can extrapolate information from your initiative and goals that are accurate based on your projectable, measurable, attainable information, and plug it in. Just like that scenario I was giving before about writing what I call the mother narrative. Same thing with your initiative and goals. Break them down to as much detail as you possibly can, knowing that you might not be able to put in that level of information into any given grant narrative. But you've gone through the trouble, you've gone through your due diligence, you've gone through the motions of breaking it down. So you at least have it internal information, and then you can pull it apart, like I said before, and drop it into your narrative to the level that you're allowed to. Hope that makes sense. Then the fourth part here, the design, the actual implementation, your plan of action, as it says there. How are you going to put it all together, right? Put it all together. Describe how you're going to put the whole thing together, right? Then the next one is the evaluation of your performance or of your projections of your operation. You cannot do the evaluation portion of the narrative if you haven't carefully outlined the initiatives and goals, because one works with the other. You cannot evaluate where you are at any given time, a month from now, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years, if you don't have proper initiative and goals that are measurable and attainable, right? Makes sense. The evaluation process is basically your review of your performance, whether good or bad. Where are you 6 months from now when I ask you, where are you with your program here? You should be able to answer specifically, here's where we are, here's what we've accomplished. It's in sync with our goals and initiatives, or it's not in sync with our goals and initiatives. It's more, it's less. You cannot give that kind of subtle variation of your evaluation of your performance if you don't have measurable and specific goals from the get-go. Again, see how they interplay? Your evaluation cannot be done with any type of reassurance if you don't have initiatives and goals that are measurable, attainable, and clearly defined. That's the only way you can do evaluation. Sustainability / capacity is your long-term planning. Do you have other initiatives? Do you have other desires? Do you have other goals that include other sources of revenue coming in? What I call non-traditional revenue streams coming in. Do you have planning where you have other resources, whether it's something you can do internally or outside sources that you're going to call upon, additional funding that you're going to call upon or pursue? That's what sustainability is. And the capacity that goes along with it. Do you have, and a lot of NOFAs, a lot of grant applications ask this, do you have the staff capacity? Do you have the people that you can, the subject matter experts, the staff, the capacity? Those are different phrases and different words that mean the same thing. Do you have the people on your staff or within your volunteer pool of people or your resources or your partners? Do you have those kind of resources that you can call upon and that you can describe in your narrative that can convince the donor that you have the capacity and the sustainability to keep going? A lot of NOFAs will ask you who's on your team, who your leadership is, what is their title, what is their background, how does it relate to what you're doing? So you've got to know who your team is, you've got to know who your leadership is, you've got to have probably job descriptions and bios of these people, because if it's asked of you to provide a list of who your leadership is and who your resources are, you want to call upon those memorandums of understanding if you have them. You want to call on those subject matter experts if you have them. You want to call on your partners. You want to call on your leadership, maybe even your tribal council or your board of directors, board of commissioners. You got to know who they are, what skill sets they have, because it might be asked of you. And you can probably see if it might be asked of you to provide this information, it might also be a grant application that's asking too much information. You know what I'm saying here? They might be asking you to provide information that your leadership, your directors of Your board of directors, board of commissioners, or your tribal council may say they're asking too much information from you on this grant application. They want to know who we are as leaders. They want to know where we live, how much money we make, our marital status. That's too much. So sustainability can get, and capacity can get pretty deep on some of these questions. And you need to be aware of that when you look at these grant applications. Sustainability is a broad term and it goes hand in hand with capacity. Capacity might start asking questions that dig deep on the going well beyond, in some cases, what you would expect to be normal capacity descriptions. We have an executive director, we have a business person, we have an accountant, we have this, we have that, we have a marketing manager. This is who they are and what they do. That's fine. But when they start getting in deeper and deeper and asking more personal questions to tie it to what you're pursuing, that's where you may have to make a decision or, go to higher authority to say, this is what they want. Do you want me to, do you want the team to provide this information or not? Probably if you don't provide it, you're not going to be fully eligible. You might lose some respect, some points in the process. But on the other hand, providing that information that's going to be perhaps public information might be too much for your leadership to want to deal with. So it's a subtle point. Again, it's a little bit of art and science here, being able to understand the obligations that you're getting into and being able to communicate that. So sustainability, you've got to keep an eye on, depending, what the funder's looking for. But generally speaking, the funder wants to make sure that you have other sources available to you and that they're not the sole provider. Okay. And then the last one is the budget from two standpoints. One, a lot of grant applications have a standard budget form that you have to fill out. And then you have to match it up with the narrative. So we have to make sure that your narrative that your section of the narrative that talks about the budget matches up with the form. We might be talking about two different forms. A budget form that goes off in one direction, and then your narrative, the section of the narrative that includes your budget, is going to be included in your narrative. You want to make sure that they parallel each other, right? That the person writing the narrative understands what's on the budget, on the real budget that's being submitted, because it could be two different documents. Okay, so those are some things. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. Talk about each of these sections, and I'll identify things I haven't already said. I talked about the summary. Identifies the organization a lot of times, key points, communicates generally big picture of the need, not the detail, but big picture. Usually states the timeline. Some of the big picture concepts are usually included in the summary. And this is just an example that was provided by a friendly tribe, housing authority to be specific. This is just a sample of their summary of their, in this case, an ICDBG that they're going to use funds for to rehabilitate 80 tribal managed units, 46 low rent apartments, and 34 mutual help homes for low and moderate income families. This is just a summary sample. And they give a couple paragraphs here on how this hasn't been done since 1971. They're in a real, as you can see, this is going to spill over into their need because they haven't done this in 50 years. So I'm sure they have a lot of rehabilitation work to do, and there's a real need for it. So this just goes on in their sample summary to talk a little bit more about that specific thing, the 80 units, and a little bit about what they're going to do, capturing not in a whole lot of detail, but capturing in their summary what they plan to do, the focus on flooring, replacement appliances, electrical upgrades, painting, etc. So a little bit on what they're going to do on the rehab, and then down below the second paragraph, the monies that's involved in it for these units. So they give a quick overview. So that's nice. Actually, the sample that was taken here, this you see, there's only 4 paragraphs. They were limited in the amount of space that they could provide a summary, so that's what they decided to do. Every grant is different, so that's why I'm saying you probably want to do this last, and you want to write a summary probably that's more comprehensive than 4 paragraphs if you can, knowing that you're going to pull out just parts of it based on the amount of space that you have. All right, statement of need. This is where we did a lot of work in the last group session. The need criteria. Statement of need clearly articulates the need of your grant proposal and must be quite a few of the following things, if not all of them. Well written, reader friendly. You don't want to make sure that you are well written, it's reader friendly. Keep in mind that the reader at the other end is making a
Yeah. Vince, sorry.
Yes. No worries.
We lost you for a second. And I can only see a black screen.
Oh my.
There
Black
we
screen.
go.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
Yeah, and we lost you at, someone quoted it, thank you. You don't want to. Thank you, Paulette.
Okay. I think I was here. The statement of need, we were talking about the statement of need, or I was. You want to, the second bullet there, include quantitative data, as I mentioned before, statistical information where you can, in a way that clearly supports the position that or the need that you're trying to describe. So there's nothing wrong with mixing words and statistics together. As long as the quantitative data and the statistical information, analysis, trends, or expert views support your argument in one way or another that aren't too confusing. You know, there's a lot of information out there. I was talking about, I think, about avoiding acronyms and jargon. We live in a society that's full of acronyms and jargons. We work in industries that are full of jargon and technical words. We want to try to keep this as user-friendly as possible, but we can use statistical information as much as possible. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with putting pie charts, bar charts, Gantt charts, information in your narrative, as long as you know that when you upload the information, you will not lose it. You will not. Sometimes, I'm saying this because sometimes when we upload our narratives, our Word document, or our PDFs, we upload them into literally upload them into the grant application. Sometimes the one does not read the other. We want to make sure you want to read the notice of funding availability carefully to make sure that all the information that you're providing and the formatting that you're providing will not be lost in the upload. That hopefully will be spelled out in your notice of funding availability. But there's nothing wrong. My point here is there's nothing wrong with using quantitative and statistical analysis information and data information in a verbiage, in pie charts, in any kind of graphic, as long as it stays intact and it can be uploaded into the final document. Nothing wrong with using that as long as you're allowed to do it and as long as it survives the upload. So something to keep in mind. Referencing reputable research, literature, comparative data, that's all fine and dandy. You can do all that as long as you give credit. Native Americans in Philanthropy has a lot of information. That's just one source. If you've never gone there before, check it out. There's a lot of good information that's available through that foundation. Okay, enough on that. And this is just the example from the tribe on that rehabilitation of housing that I gave you. They give a couple examples as we go through. They're giving here in these 1, 2, or 3 paragraphs more detail on the need of the real need of rehabilitation of their housing units, because it's been a long time. The tribe has grown significantly. The housing units are under management. It goes on to tell more details of why it needs to be done. Go on to the next slide. Here in this slide, if you can see it, they give some statistical information. I didn't put in all the statistical information they provided. They had a lot of stuff in there, and it looked beautiful. They had a lot of graphs and statistical information. I just captured a couple comments that they had here, including the number of units, the dollar amount that they projected their need, etc. The middle paragraph, they talk about the age and condition of the appliances and how they're old and they need to be upgraded, etc. And they had a lot more information on the need. They had the space to put it in. This is all very specific information. Factual about what they're trying to do with their rehabilitation efforts. And that's how you need to approach it. So their statement of need, I captured 5 or 6 paragraphs, very specific to what they were trying to do on the need and spelling it out, what was happening on the tribe. They did not have to go and quote statistics nationally or globally. They had enough information with the condition of the housing units on the tribe to get the point across. Okay. Then we get into the third area, initiative goals. We talked about that extensively earlier. Everything in this section basically is statistical. It's quantitative, right? Our initiative, our goals, our outcomes, our results, the logic model, those are all performance driven. They're all statistical, right? That's what we have from the statistics, from the logic model that I showed you before. I don't have it here. You know, the matrix that I showed you before, which is data driven, right? You've got an initiative, and the initiative generates a goal. The goal generates outcomes, and the outcome generate results. Those are all number and percentage driven, right? So everything is performance driven in this area. And from that, we're able to pull our narrative that explains what the quantitative terms are trying to convey in our matrix, in our, in our logic model. So logic model first, defining what your initiative is and assigning the goals and the numbers associated with it. Then from there, once you have that to the extent that makes sense for you, then you start verbalizing it. Then you start, don't do it the other way around. You want to take do the statistical part first. You want to do the initiative, the goals, the outcome, and the results first using quantitative data, right? Then from there, generate the narrative that is you're gleaning from it, that you're taking, extrapolating from the statistical information. And all of that supports your mission. All of that supports the initiative. Hope that makes sense, right? Logic model first, based on your initiative. Then from there, you can start working on the narrative section of this part of your narrative, the verbiage section of this part of the narrative. So initiative goals, I'm not putting it here, and I don't have it. I don't think I have it in a matrix, but here's the initiative sample from that tribe. Improve tribal housing conditions, kind of broad, kind of open-ended the initiative, but it's specific to tribal housing. The goal, one of the goals, complete rehabilitation of 80 units over the course of a 5-year period. Okay, that's pretty specific. That's a specific goal. The outcome, if that goal falls in place, the outcome would be, theoretically, the outcome should be 46 low rent units will be rehabilitated and 34 mutual help units will receive energy upgrades. That is their projected outcome. And the result would be tribal families will realize decreased energy consumption by 30% because of the upgrades, and utility costs of 25% because of improved energy efficiency in some of the units. So a double whammy, a double increase, energy consumption and utility cost improvement. So you can either look at the utility cost as a decrease or as an improved energy efficiency. Either way, it's a win-win. It's a double efficiency, double increase here. So it's a beautiful thing. And see, it's very clear. You know, their initiative and goals and outcomes and results are pretty straightforward. Their logic model was pretty simple with this. And from that, they were able to put the verbiage together in each of the areas to describe what they were trying to do. Logic model first, verbiage comes after, right? And you can, as I said before, you can assign the logic model to any program, as you see here. Here's a different look at it. Here's kind of the traditional look at it from a matrix standpoint of what we were just talking about for this tribe. On the far, the top hasn't changed. There's your 4 bullet points. Those remain the same logic model, but it's the matrix below that has different things assigned to it. Bottom left, initiative, improve housing conditions, just as I said. Goal, rehabilitation of 80 units. Beautiful, straightforward, specific. Outcome, within a year, 1 year, 46 units are rehabilitated, 34 mutual help units get energy upgrades, just as they said. The result, 30% reduction in energy costs based on the upgrades of consumption and 25% reduction in utility costs. Everything in that matrix is SMART. It's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tangible. From that, they are able to expand on their narrative quite easily to meet. They, this first, and then from that, they can put the verbiage together to expand on it, which they did, which I showed you in previous slide. This is I think, a beautiful example. Okay. Then they get into the design, and here's where it all pays off. Here's where they're taking the need and they're taking the goals that they're assigning to meet those needs, to accomplish those needs. Here's the design where they're telling the reader, the funder, how they're going to do it. The design should describe how the organization will accomplish its goals and its needs in a clear and concise way. It can be done in the detailed narrative, of course. It should be explicit. It should explain any special methods that are going to be involved in best achieving the objectives and the goals, etc. This is where you can expand a little bit on how you're going to do things. And how, as the third bullet gets into, where are you going to go to get those supplies and the equipment? Who's going to provide the equipment? Are you going to have resources that provide the equipment? Here's where you can get into your volunteers, to your leveraging, all your partnerships, your memorandums of understanding. That's all in the design, how it's all going to come together. What resources are you going to use? And who's going to benefit from all of this? Is where you can expand on that. It's in your logic model who's going to benefit, but here's where you can expand upon it. And here's the sample, and I've just put it in 10 or 11 different things here. Implementation schedule is part of their design. This is part of the tribe's example. Complete the environmental review, get the certifications needed. Second, complete the contractor bid process. Okay, we know there's a process for that. Complete the bid award. That goes along with number 2, the award process for the general contractor. Finalize the cost estimates and work plans, working with the GC. Finalize the work schedule for the contractors. Now, keep in mind, all of these come with probably a Gantt schedule, a timeline that all of this has to be accomplished. I just didn't put it up for sake of space, and everything would be the timeline associated with it that matches up with the logic model that you saw. 6, begin procurement of the kitchens. That's part of the rehab process. 7, solicit bids and procure materials For the kitchen appliances, that was their number one focus on the kitchen, was to upgrade appliances. 8, review bids to determine responsiveness and eligibility and perform price analysis of, the vendors that are providing the equipment and the kitchen appliances, etc. Complete the kitchen remodels on 13 units. 10, monitor the construction, make sure that's all going, especially if it's prevailing wage. That has to be done from the get-go. Talked about that earlier. Davis-Bacon, prevailing wage, certified payroll records. If you're spending more than $2,000, you're in the realm of Davis-Bacon legislation, and you've got prevailing wage and certified payroll records. So you need to work hand in hand with the general contractor to make sure that his or her employees and the subs reporting to the GC are, doing what they're supposed to be doing, are being paid the appropriate wage according to their skill, according to their trade, in the county that they're working in the state that you're in, etc. That's all part of the certified payroll record process. 11, monitor compliance with the scope of work and the plans with the GC and the specifications, the budget, the implementation schedule. That should all be flowing through you, not necessarily you as the grant writer, but you need to be aware that this is part of what's happening. Complete final inspection, document satisfactory completion of work is the end product. And of course, number 13 would be implementation, actually using the facility or bringing in folks into the process, into the housing. More on the implementation sample inspections. Monitoring will occur throughout the implementation phase. That's something they're doing. They built into their logic model process. And inspections will consider quality of work, of course, and compliance with federal tribal regulations, Davis-Bacon, prevailing wage, as I mentioned. Standards, that's all part of the process. They're going to monitor all that and document as they go. And that's all part, that would be all part of their logic model process to make sure that the inspections and monitoring are included as part of the outcome, or it might even be a separate goal, if integrated into the logic model process. And then one of the very important ones that I alluded to before, the evaluation criteria. You cannot perform an evaluation of where you are with your goals. That's the first bullet. Your second bullet, your objectives. The third bullet, measuring accomplishments for each objective. You can't do any of those things if you don't have the proper goals in place and the logic model process, or something like a logic model in place where you can measure all of these. You can't do any of those bullet items. You cannot do the fourth one, state how the findings will be used. You cannot clearly do the bottom one, state clearly what data will be collected, how records will be kept. You cannot do anything. You can't evaluate your success or your progress if you don't have the process set up in a way that has measurable results built in every step. Again, a nod to the logic model process, or something like that, where everything is detailed and quantitative, and your narrative spins off of those quantitative results. And here's an example from that same tribe, the same situation. Their verbiage, not mine, their verbiage, a process evaluation will compare the actual work of the project with the proposed implementation schedule. And of course, that implementation schedule would have to be mentioned or referenced in the logic model process as a part of the outcome. The product evaluation will review the quality of the actual rehab work in compliance with quality standards, the tenant satisfaction, if there is a tenant, and to be measured by survey and a final interview, perhaps, and cost savings realized. The cost, overall, that's what they're looking for, is to save money short-term and long-term. And the last one here is the one I talked about, second to the last. Budget is last, but this is certainly the last important area in the narrative, and that is the sustainability section. It states future and long-term big picture. If you haven't already described this in your design, this is where you can put it in your sustainability. And also, sustainability is going to include your capacity, as I talked about before, your ability to maintain, your ability and wherewithal to look for other funding opportunities and other creative revenue streams to help support this program. We're looking for a description of that. The second bullet, the first one bullet says an outline of future fundraising. That's what I'm talking about, revenue streams and things like that. What you're going to do to create other opportunities that support what you're trying to do. A blueprint of how future long-term plans will be implemented. If you do have future fundraising plans or revenue stream plans, how are you going to implement them? And you need to be really realistic here about what those opportunities are to the best of your ability. And if you can, if there's, it says information on hiring additional staff, consultants, partners, etc. This is the area of, the leveraging thing, volunteers, again, if you're going to be using other resources, again, not just in the implementation stage, but down the road, this is where you can talk about sustainability things that are going to support your program. The bullet down there at the bottom says, as I mentioned early on, funders want their investment to produce results and facilitate future results. Isn't that what we all are looking for? Not only to accomplish the short term, but for it to be there in the long term. And that's what funders are looking for. So all these things that we've been talking about so far are mechanisms or tools, skill sets that we can use to help define, to help do just that, to describe how this is going to work in the short term and how it's going to work in the long term, with reasonable assurance that your logic model, the components of your logic model, and the predictions that you're making in your logic model are realistic and attainable. Because deep down, I think we all want to be able to have long-term sustainability. And here's their example, the tribe's example. The tribe has successful. Yeah.
Sorry, before you move on to the example, we have two questions that I didn't want to lose track of as we're getting through this material. So Paulette inquired, so it's good to use your demographics report on who we serve, question mark?
Absolutely. Because it's demographics, it's statistical information. And if you can use the statistical information in a way that supports your position, supports your need, then all power to you. That's what we want to try to do. We want to try to mix our verbiage and our description in our narrative with statistical information where it's available and where it's accurate and reliable. So you want to make sure that your source of your statistical information is legitimate. You don't want to quote hearsay or information that's not accurate or anecdotal. You want to make sure that your information is legitimate.
So what I'm actually talking about is the demographics report from our housing data system, so we could prove, this is how many tribal members we have and so on and so forth.
You might have to pull pieces out of it, but you can probably reference that and then pull sections out where you can fit it in. You might not be able to upload the whole document, but there's certainly nothing wrong from the way I'm looking at it in most cases to pull out statistics from that report and use it to build an argument for your narrative. So short answer is yes, you can do that. Long answer is you might have to pull out you might have to cut and paste, but pull out sections as long as you reference where it's coming from and the legitimacy of the report. Depends on the NOFA, depends on whether you can upload the whole thing. As long as it provides an argument that supports your position, I don't see a problem with it.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And then Clifton had his hand up. Clifton, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, earlier you were quoting some, you had some percentages up there, like 30%
Yeah.
savings but would you use, how would you gather or like the data for those amounts and the building isn't built yet? You're quoting that it'll be 30% savings in electric and I can't remember, but
Yeah, I was putting different things. I was doing some projections. I was using my subject matter experts. It's all hypothetical in the examples here.
okay.
But I
Okay.
was, to the best of my ability, I was trying to speculate
Well,
what those savings would be.
yeah, I mean that's good information, but how do you think we would get that information just from other buildings of the same type or something? Thank you.
Yeah, that might be one of the, comparables. That might be a good source. What other buildings of the, same comparable, you could use it. You use that as one of your references, and I would certainly quote that as one of your reference points. Other comparable facilities, use that as one of your, one of the resources that you use to come up with your percentages. You always want to try to document where you can, where you're getting your information. And the more variance you have in that, in other words, different sources that you can pull from, the better off it looks for you. So yeah, comparables would be a place that I would go to. Good question.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then Philip Brown made more of a statement and stated you didn't mention any agency or federal or state program technical assistance programs.
Yeah, okay, good point. Yeah, they're out there. SBA, for example, Small Business Association. It's one that just comes to the top of mind because I had it in one of the slides early on. And that's just one example. SBA has all kinds of and USDA, that's another one. It has all kinds of support. They're an agency, federal agency. So yes, good point. I apologize for that. There's a lot of excellent smaller agencies that provide services, programs, services, and products that can be not only used in your projects and programs, but also hopefully be incorporated into your narrative and described as a resource and used as a leverage to some degree. So yes, good point. Absolutely. With those other agencies and the services and products that they can provide.
And then Paulette inquired, when you say technical assistance, what do you actually mean? Funny enough, the Native Learning Center. Go ahead.
Crystal,
Technical assistance is
Yes, go ahead.
Hey Vince, how you doing? You're doing a
Good.
great job, you guys. And
Thank you.
but technical assistance also is HUD. If you're doing like Indian Housing Block Grant and Indian Community Development Block Grants, HUD has technical assistance. They give, you can apply to them for technical assistance on any of anywhere you might need technical assistance, and they'll give it to you at no cost through the agency. But also you're talking about energy efficiency and upgrading these buildings and all the electrical. For any of that kind of statistics and data, you can go either to the Department of Energy in their Indian Energy Program or the BIA and their Office of Indian Energy. And they have all the personnel, all the data, all the statistics, and they supply technical assistance on a lot of different projects, especially in energy efficiency and upgrading and housing and renewable energy. So that's
Excellent. Excellent information. Yes, and Native Learning Center is a perfect example of technical assistance. We work with the ONAP offices, particularly Eastern Woodlands office of ONAP, in providing technical assistance. Our version of technical assistance is training, but there's other, as you alluded to, there's other types of technical assistance that's available through HUD. Great. And thank you very much with the BIA and the other resources that are out there. Good. Thank you. Anything else, Crystal, for the moment?
Paulette said, I always thought it was something we can run by when we're working on grants and such. I'm not sure what she means. Paulette, if you want to unmute and elaborate.
So like this is my first ICDBG grant I'm working on, and some parts are really confusing to me. Like I've never, I've done other grants, but not on the federal level. And like the rating stuff,
Right. The
and I
rating
know you're gonna
factors.
say, yeah, and I know you're gonna send that to me, so at least I'll
Yes.
have some kind of information, but you know, I just want to be able to look at somebody and say, hey, look, and what am I missing? Do I have all my parts?
Right. No,
Understood.
that completely
Because to
makes
me,
sense.
that's what technical assistance is, that somebody's
Yeah.
looking at a second set of eyes is looking at it saying, oh,
Yeah.
you could improve this, or
Right.
Yeah, kind of one-on-one type of
Right.
training. Yeah,
And
and we're,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I was just gonna say, I think it depends on, the program itself and the services that they provide. So, like Vince mentioned earlier. And then Vince, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I'm just gonna say we're gonna hook you up with that subject matter expert on the ICDBG because it's kind of outside the parameter. I mean, it fit, kind of fits what we're talking here, but it's a very specific program. And we have someone that has incredible expertise in that, Native Learning Center has someone
thank you
that
very much.
we can help you. All right,
Awesome.
keep going
Okay.
here.
That's it.
All right.
Yeah. That's all I got.
All
Go
right.
ahead, Vince.
We've got sustainability, enough said on that, and I talked a little bit about the budget, the narrative component of pertaining to the budget in your narrative needs to match up with the actual form that is submitted. I think it's form, I want to say it's form 420, well, it's part of form 425. I said 425, I want to think. Well, even if I got the name wrong, the formal form for the budget on these federal grants, your narrative needs to match up dollar for dollar with it. And it's something you need to be aware of, that, who's ever writing the narrative, you want to be absolutely sure that what you're putting in the verbiage that you're using in your narrative matches up with the data that you're putting in, the figures that you're putting in on your actual budget form. Be careful of that. Make sure that they match up, whether you're talking about direct costs or indirect costs, which can be included in the budget. Direct costs should probably be the biggest percentage of what of your spending, of what your costs are. Every grant is a little bit different. I can tell you that the Indian Housing Block Grant has a certain cutoff of how much direct costs and indirect costs can be. I want to say it's an 80-20 split, of direct costs being 80% of allowable cost in the program, and indirect being no more than 20%. That's the default percentages for the Indian Housing Block Grant. Now, other grants might have different percentages, and other tribal entities might be able to negotiate a different direct indirect ratio, but that's the default rate for the Indian Housing Block Grant. My point here is to be, as a bottom bullet says, 100% accurate on all of your expenses. Make sure that your resources that you're going to use, if any, the volunteers, the equipment, the other resources that you're trying to leverage, have been accurately converted, that you're leveraging is accurate, that you've converted them to a dollar amount accurately, and that you've documented that. So if you're ever challenged to show how you converted volunteer time to payroll time, how did you come up with volunteers working on the project, leverage, and you put that, you need to be able to provide that information, how you came up with that. Oh, I thought I heard a question. Sorry, I paused for a minute because I thought I heard a question come up. Okay,
No,
it's
someone,
pretty straightforward.
sorry, someone jumped in the room and we were muting them.
Okay, all right.
You're good.
It's pretty straightforward, but you need to, if anything, you need to have that kind of information available through your finance people or yourself. You need to know if you're going to be leveraging resources and using them as part of the grant, and assigning a dollar value to something that usually doesn't have a dollar value, you better be very accurate in going for making sure that you're doing apples and apples here. Like my example with the volunteers, what is a reasonable arrival based on what they're doing? What would that be? And where are the volunteers going to be used? Are they going to be used on a construction site? Is the construction site a Davis-Bacon construction site? Or are you going to use them for office work where probably not use them on a construction site because it's just too complicated getting volunteers involved with Davis-Bacon and prevailing wage. Office work is another animal. But how much would you pay that person? 10 an hour, 15 an hour, whatever your rate of pay is, any fringe, those kind of things, as I mentioned before, and calculate that and show, like your third grade math teacher used to say, show me the math, show me the formula. How did you get to the end result? I know you know the answer to the question, but how did you divide 5 into 17.3 and come up with that answer? Show me the process. Same thing here. You need to show in this respect, especially with leveraging resources, how you came up with a dollar value for something that normally there would be a flat out direct cost. So just a word, just kind of a tip to just keep that in mind if you're ever thinking about going in that direction. That's your budget narrative. Here's the example given from that tribe. Theirs is pretty straightforward. The project is 1.4. Of this, 800,000 is going to be requested from HUD with 275 committed and 379.3 thousand of uncommitted funding to be supplied by the tribe through its IHBG program and its Title VI, respectively. So 275 from IHBG, 379K from the Title VI. They just spelled it out. I think I got a graphic on the next page that kind of shows their very simplified, in this example, a very simple budget here. The point is their narrative matches up with their budget example, dollar for dollar, not only for the total amount, but how they're splitting it out. You can see this is being leveraged. They're asking for a certain dollar amount from HUD for the rehab of apartments and windows, and they're leveraging other sources, other federal funding sources from the tribe for matching amounts or, for leveraged amounts. So they're being creative in that regard. The point I'm making here is there could be another column, and that could be other leveraging, if it's allowed with this grant, other leveraging from other sources that are not included here, but could be. So that is something, I don't want to beat that too much. Okay, I am done with that section, and since we're done at the bottom of the hour here, 4:30 Eastern, I want to get into the very last section before I turn it over to Crystal again for the second activity. And that's just to spend a few minutes here talking about something that's not as obvious. And that is when it comes to narrative writing, there are some writing skills that are pretty straightforward, pretty common sense, but I want to talk about them a little bit and bring them to your attention and point out some things that you may not be aware of. And the first one is writing techniques. I kind of mentioned this off and on throughout the day. The grant proposal is a different style of writing. It's narrative writing. It's to some extent. Grant writing is basically that. It's storytelling to the amount that you can storytell. It uses, as we talked about before, it uses statistics and facts rather than personal opinions, assumptions, anecdotes. It uses statistics and facts to support the narrative. And the narrative tends to be passionate, right? We're telling a story. We're trying to convince a reader that our needs for our program warrant their investment. So we have to tell a story. It's different. We can, at the bottom there, talk a couple bullets there. As I mentioned before, you can use bullets, you can use tables, graphs, colors, underline, bold. You can use all those things as long as they survive the upload. We always have to take our document at some point, and we're going to have to upload it because everything's online these days. You upload your documents, you name them. Even if it's a Word document, you're going to create a PDF. They're probably even going to tell you how to name your documents in sequential order so that when you upload them, they come up in sequential order. And that, hopefully when they're uploaded, your bullets, your tables, your graphs, your underlines, your bolds survive that. But there's nothing that stops you from doing that, generally speaking, with your narrative, unless the notice of funding availability flat out tells you don't do it. Then don't do it. But otherwise, anytime those kind of things are open. You also, as the last bullet says, you want to convey confidence, pride, and passion. What I mean by confidence is in your statement of need, what you don't want to do is paint a picture that's so gloom and doom that there's no hope for it. It's the end of the world. You don't want to paint it that way. You want to paint it as a serious problem that needs to be fixed, but you have the confidence and know that your tribe, your entity, your program, your contractors can do it. So that's the confidence that needs to be conveyed, and the pride and the passion in the storytelling. And that's what grant writing really is about. It's about storytelling. We want to use good writing skills where we can. Well, that's just a given. We want to, where we can, we want to avoid using things. We want to use the funder's name if that's possible. That's really critical when it comes to private funding from the private sector. Using the funder's name, you knowing that we recognize you, Bill and Melinda Gates, and we're going to say your name over and over. That's not so easy to do with an ICDBG or Indian Housing Block Grant where it's all statistical, a lot of statistical information. Use sentence variety, that's common sense writing skills. Be direct and concise. You want to, as I mentioned before, with that mother narrative, what I call the mother narrative, that's where you can be verbose. That's where you can expand your verbiage and really put in, open up your heart, open up your passion, open up your storytelling, knowing that you probably have too much there and that you're going to have to pull things out of it so that you can meet that bottom left, be direct and concise. You want to have the information there so you can manipulate it. It's hard to manipulate and fit verbiage and data, especially verbiage when you don't have anything to pull it from. And you, like I said before, and Crystal said before, you don't want to sit down and compose at the, on the actual application. You simply won't have the time to do it. You'll make too many mistakes, or you'll be timed out, or it just won't work. You'll get frustrated. You need to create a Word document or something that you can draw upon, turn it in, fix it, narrate it, clean it up, create a PDF if you need to. You probably need to upload it, but then use that as your go-to for your verbiage. Okay, and I mentioned before using all kinds of bold, italics, underline, graphs, everything that's allowed. Avoid poetic language, sexist language, rhyming, word repetition. Don't be clever. Keep in mind that there are people at the other end that are reading this. They're like you and me. They're probably involved in the industry. They know what they're reading. They understand. So they don't need to read a bunch of jargon or acronyms. They don't need you to be clever or try to be funny or try to use texting language or TikTok or anything out there, any social media, what's hot in social media. Don't do any of that. This is not the place to do that. We want to rely on information that gets the point across, primarily relying on facts, but embellishing where we can with passion, with storytelling, where we can, to get the story across and to convey the message to the reader. A lot of times we are told how to format. Usually we're going to use what's referred to as the APA style, which is Times New Roman 12-point font. A lot of times we're told that our narratives have to be double spaced. That's fine. Margins, typically 1 inch on both sides, left justified. But a lot of these can change. You need to look at the notice of funding availability to see if the funder has specific requirements. Sometimes they'll say the top couple bullets, font, they'll give you the font, the font size, and the type of font, the double space margins, but they'll say something like, don't use more than 10 pages total for your narrative, and they'll drop that in there. Okay, that kind of tells you you've got to put all the information that you're trying to convey, your summary, your need, your goals and objectives, your sustainability, your budget narrative within 10 pages. So that's going to, those are the little things you need to look for. Or it could be a fillable PDF where you're limited to keystrokes or a word count that limits you, no other way to put it, that limits you into the amount of words that you can put in. That's where we want to have that mother narrative that I was talking about before that we can go to. If it's font is Times New Roman 12-point double space, boom, I can put that on my narrative. I can put 1-inch margins in, I can left justify, I can indent the first line each. I can do all of those things or anything else on my Word document, and then I can pull it out in bits and pieces and drop it into that fillable PDF. No sweat, no worries. Instead of trying to compose it and, oh, it's limiting me to 200 words or 200 keystrokes or 5,000 words, and I've only used 200. No, you don't want to get yourself in that situation. So be mindful of the formatting requirements. Hopefully the NOFA provides you with those guidelines. If not, perhaps this is something you fall back on, which we refer to as APA style. Named long ago after the American Psychological Association. This goes way back before my time, but that is the APA default standard for writing skills. So just so you know that. Now there might be a different format too. It might not be Times New Roman. It could be Arial. It could be any, a bunch of different things. Depends on what they want. Okay, readability and effectiveness. This is the difference between narrative writing and technical writing. Now, a good narrative for a grant probably is going to have a little bit of both, with the majority of it being narrative writing, with a little bit of technical in there, a little bit of technical writing, because sometimes, especially when you have statistical information, you're going to follow up or introduce it with technical information, right? Technical language.
Vin, sorry, you have to move forward the slide. We're still on formatting.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. Narrative, technical. So I'm saying
Yep.
left of the screen narrative, right of the screen technical. The majority, probably 80 to 85% of your narrative is going to be in the narrative style, storytelling. The method we learned in school, we're telling a story. This is where the passion comes through, the descriptions, the narrative. Its main focus is to persuade the reader at the other end and to tell a story. That's probably 80 to 85% of your narrative all the time in a narrative style. But we're going to integrate it throughout with the right side, with the technical writing. It's the opposite method. Its main focus is on precision, accuracy, consistency, data, that type of thing. The goal is to get compliance or to establish facts. Think of the difference between, the narrative is a story. So can look at that as like a book, a narrative book that you pick off a shelf. The technical writing is like an owner's manual that you might have for the lawnmower in your garage or for the blender in your kitchen, right? Or for the vacuum cleaner or for the car you're driving. Each one of them comes with a technically written owner's manual. It's written primarily for safety standards, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3, don't put your hand on the blades, don't put your hand underneath the mower, put the key in ignition, close the door, step on the brake before you start the car, etc. It's written mostly with facts and mostly procedural, mostly written for safety and statistical reason to convey step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, that type of thing, where narrative writing is what we're going to fall back on to describe the passion, the need, and the story of what we're trying to do. See the difference? Two different writing skills, the focus being narrative writing with technical skills integrated. Now, where you put the technical writing depends on what you're doing. There's no rule of thumb that narrative is the first half, technical writing is the second half. It's, you know, it's art and science, it's give and take, it's where you need it, you put in the technical writing. Or on some things, you know, some federal fund, keep that in mind. They might tilt more to the technical side. So your writing skills need to be more technically oriented, performance based, statistical analysis, more technical oriented and less narrative. So back and forth, they're kind of black and white, but you can probably understand where they would integrate together, right? Most of the time, we're focusing on narrative with a little bit of technical support, but sometimes we have to rely on, depending upon what we're doing, on being able to articulate what we're trying to accomplish using technical jargon. But I'll tell you, a lot of us, you know, me included, a lot of us learned how to function in society, how to write by the narrative writing style. And not so much technical. The technical, you can see that in our architect and engineering friends. Those are technical oriented people, construction, perhaps. Those people are technically driven. You know, their performance base falls right in there. Where those of us who came up on the, you know, that side of the narrative writing, sometimes it's a little difficult, you know, to be able to integrate technical with narrative. But please understand, the opportunities that exist with both and how you can use them to your advantage. Nick, can you see this screen?
Which one?
Where I got narrative on the left, technical on the right, and there are two columns.
No, we see the bubbles.
All right, go back, bubbles, forward, columns. Hopefully you see two.
Still see,
two columns.
oh, there we go. There we go. Now it's caught up. Okay.
Oh
Great.
my gosh. Well, I don't know why it's lagging so.
Sometimes it does. You do have one question though, Vince, from Philip Brown. He inquired,
Yep.
can you use the technical people to do the technical write-ups in the grants?
Yeah, as long as you certainly can. You certainly can. As long as it's not clearly obvious that you have other people writing the narrative for you. Consistency is important in narrative writing. You want to make your narrative look like it's written by one person, if that makes sense, that it flows, that it's consistent. And I've seen this. This is a dysfunctional thing where some of the narrative is written in form, and then all of a sudden the narrative changes its whole focus and its consistency changes, and it's written in a different language almost. You want to, yeah, the short answer is yes. You can have technical people write the technical part or give you information on the technical part that you can drop in to the overall narrative, but you want to be careful that the language of your narrative doesn't dramatically change. You want to be consistent in the sound of your narrative from beginning to end. I hope that makes sense. You know, you can tap on technical people, you can use technical information, but make sure it's not totally sounding totally different than how the rest of your narrative is structured. All right. All right. What you should.
Sorry,
Yeah.
one more question. Paulette said,
Absolutely.
is it easier to have two people write them separately?
Well, I think my previous answer answered that. And that
Right.
is, you can do that, but you need to make sure that they come together, that they're knitted together. There's nothing wrong with the team approach, with different people writing different sections based on their expertise, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's bringing it together so it looks like one consistent document, that it flows as if it's written by one person, even if there was a team writing different sections. I hope that makes sense.
Right.
So
And I
yes, you
wrote in
can
the
do that.
chat, yeah, I wrote in the chat that cohesiveness is important.
Yeah. Cohesiveness, consistency, uniformity so you can do all those things. You just have to make sure it sounds like it's coming from person's one person's description.
And it's very easy to not make that the case when you have multiple
Yes.
people writing,
Yes.
because you're talking about different writing styles potentially. You're talking about just a bunch of things that can go, into it. So, yep.
And you as the grant writer, remember you're the orchestra conductor, you are the quarterback, you are the chef. You are looking to make sure overall that your narrative, that your whole grant is consistent throughout. Otherwise, you have a haphazard, it's going to be disjointed. And if I'm receiving your grant and I see it's radically, the thought process coming in the narrative is radically different from the verbiage selection and the description 3 pages down, I'm going to say, what happened here? We were going along fine with this description, and all of a sudden we got totally different word usage, that doesn't make sense. And that's the last thing you want. If you look at the screen, another look at the narrative technical. This is what we want to accomplish no matter how we go about doing it, using different people to write, using different skills, as long as it comes together. The narrative column is, narrative writing is persuasive, tends to be free flowing, tends to be more descriptive, it tends to be longer, it tends to be more vague. These are some of the obstacles we need to be aware of. It tends to be full of emotion. It's emotion oriented, or it can be. And it tends to be a slower read. Where just the opposite, technical writing is designed to be just the opposite. It's designed to be specific, concise, factual, shorter, clearer on meaning, action oriented, and based on speed. So the trick with grant writing is to blend these two seamlessly, whether you do it yourself and have technical subject matter experts that provide you with the technical information, or you actually literally turn it over to someone else to write the technical part and provide you. It doesn't matter. The end result should be the same, that you've integrated all of these dysfunctional things, that you've avoided all of these functional things, and you're coming out with a narrative that has the same voice, if that makes sense. Sounds the same from beginning to end, as if information throughout, that the word choices and the flow and the sound of it is the same. And that is, again, this is art and science. This is a little bit of magic that has the grant writers possess, that they have to do. They have to be able to seamlessly blend narrative and all of its beautiful features and some of its downfalls, along with technical writing, which is just the opposite, with its advantages that it brings of statistical analysis and conciseness, but also the downfalls that it has of being very different from the very passionate, flowing narrative style. I can't say much more on that. Two different style narrative writing. Hopefully you can see this screen. Narrative writing typically is written for the end, for readers, generally speaking. Narrative writing is the typical writing that we see. It's what we see in books that we like to read when we're sitting at the beach or next to the pool or wherever. They're written for readers. Narrative writing is written for readers, where technical writing is written for users. Users of an appliance, users of a vehicle, user of equipment. That's how technical writing is. So integrating those two is a skill set that grant writers need to practice. Okay. Having people help you with that to give you statistical information, technical information, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Having them actually write it is nothing wrong with that either, as long as you can take their technical information, the way that it's written, and integrate it in with your overall narrative so that it sounds cohesive and doesn't look like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Women are narrative writers and men are technical writers, and it's not coming together here, folks. You want to avoid that kind of mix match, and this is where grant writers earn their keep, being able to integrate those two styles so that your narrative makes sense, narrative wise and technically wise. I hope that makes sense. That is really a higher level of grant writing, to be able to take all those outside resources and assistance and help, especially from technical resources out there, and integrate it seamlessly into your narrative so it all sounds the same on the reader's perspective. Because those people at the other end reading your grant primarily are going to be readers. They're not going to be users. They're not using your grant, they're reading your grant. So the bulk of your verbiage needs to be narrative, passionate storytelling, keeping in mind that it needs to also be concise and have technical input where needed. Obviously, you need to proofread and to edit. You also need to have thick skin when it comes to proofreading and editing, because a real good proofreader, a real good editing job will find mistakes. That's what you want deep down inside. That's what you need. You need to have it proofread, your document, not by you, not by the writer, but by someone else. It probably needs to be edited. That's why you want to put as much as you can into a Word document before you convert it to a PDF, before you do anything with it. Make sure that your verbiage combines all the things that we've been talking about, and all the writing skills that we were just talking about, and that the proofreading makes sense to a third party reading it on your behalf. And that if editing is mentioned, it's probably going to happen, and you need to have some thick skin. We all do as grant writers, to know that some people are going to look at it and they might disagree, or they might find an error, or they might suggest editing, and we have to take that under consideration. That's hard to do sometimes when it's your baby, when it's your project, and you put blood, sweat, and tears into it, and some outsider comes in and sits down and said, this thing is full of typos, or this section just doesn't make sense, or whatever. We need to be able to work with that. That's another it's another high level skill of a grant worker, is having thick skin and being able to work with that. And you can mitigate that by having those subject matter experts with you from the beginning to help you put this together to the best of your ability. So I've reached a point, Crystal, where I think we are ready to spend our remaining time on the last activity. We're ready to close out. This is where we kind of put it all together. So I'm going to kick it back to you to put the activity 2, and that'll take us to the end of our session here.
Perfect. Okay. But before we jump into that, do we have any questions? Any questions at all? We're here to answer them. If you want to go ahead and unmute, by all means, go ahead and do so. or throw it in the chat, and I'm happy to ask the question for you. But in the meantime, while we wait for those, OISTA plugged in the chat box, the survey. So if you can go ahead and please complete that, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate you being here today. But yes, take a moment to fill out that survey. It's just 5 questions. It's easy peasy. Lets us know how we can improve and, you know, continue to improve and so on and so forth. So definitely take a moment to do that. In the meantime, Vince, so I'm just sharing the same document I shared last.
Yeah. You're just scrolling down to the bottom where it says activity 2.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second here. Can we see this?
I see my slide, proofreading and editing.
Yeah, we just see the PDF, Crystal.
Okay, yeah, that's what you should be saying. So at the top, it says grants, writing, activity 1. And if I scroll, there's,
I only
No,
see
Crystal.
Vince's slides.
okay, give me 1 second.
Yeah, that was the last slide I had.
Okay.
You had it up before.
Oh, it's because I was sharing a specific window. What about now?
There you go. You got it.
Yes.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's because I got dual monitors, guys. We got real techie technology here. Yeah. Okay, so earlier, if y'all remember, we all did so great on really breaking down essentially the scenario that turned into a real life situation, or it was a real life situation, I guess, that technically came out of the scenario. But in any case, we broke down the objectives, the needs, the benefits, and or, you know, beneficiaries, the project team, the resources and or leverage. So these are all pieces you're going to need in order to, you know, move forward in the whole grant writing process, as we've learned today. And so now we're actually developing the grant narrative. So in here, the first step is definitely going to be to describe the design. And Vince, I don't know if you want to kind of start the conversation, and we can get the participants to kind of throw in ideas and so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
I'm actually going to start with B. I'm going to skip over A. We'll come back to it.
Beautiful.
B really should be A, and A should be B. We want to look at B as you see it on the screen. And if we're going to take the example from what we did earlier, then we need some input here on describing the major objective, and if we can, any 1 or 2 goals that we might be able to, and some outcomes and results. So if we're going to use the example from earlier, which I don't have in front of me. Oh, there it is.
I do.
And okay. Is the person who gave us that information still in the room?
I want to say it was Kathleen. I could be
I'm
wrong.
here. I'm
Oh, yeah.
here.
Okay. You know, you provided the bulk of this information, so we're figuring we're going to go take it to the next level and use your need on, or your description of domestic, you know, the abuse situation, to create a treatment program, to fill out, take it to the next level, which is to do the bottom of this work, this activity, and that is B there, describe the major objective. That's going to be a repeat of what we had above, and that's to create, scroll up to the top again, to create treatment programs to reduce physical domestic violence in the community. That sentence right there, or reduce physical domestic violence, at least that phrase, that four-word phrase, reduce physical domestic violence, if we could capture that and bring it down into activity B, down below, that
I would
is
just,
your,
yeah, I was gonna say, don't put the treatment in there. That would be the best part, yeah.
yeah, reduce.
Sorry, what was it that you said again?
Yeah,
Reduce. Reduce.
Domestic violence.
in the community. Something like that. It's so small you can't read it now.
Yeah. It shrinks. It shrinks.
Let's just go with reduced domestic violence. We assume it's in the community.
Okay,
Otherwise, we can't read it. Yeah, it's so small we can't read it.
there we go.
There we go. Okay. Now, gonna go back to you. If that is the initiative, which is a good one, but it's kind of broad, right? It's very broad. Reduce domestic violence. Now we need to start breaking this down into tangible, realistic goals. How are we gonna do that? Are there two things right out of the gate that can be established as a goal?
Community outreach.
Okay, that's a good one. Develop or implement community outreach. Yeah,
And collaborative efforts with other entities within the community.
Just keeps getting tinier.
just go with outreach.
Sorry.
Just go with your first word there. What was it?
Collaborative. Which one are we?
You can only
Which
go
way?
with, you can only go with like one word on each line.
Oh my goodness.
We get the point. We get the point.
Yeah.
We'll talk our way through it. If you can, Crystal, just go with one word there if you can. What was your first goal?
It was to community outreach. Just yeah.
Okay, outreach. Just go with outreach.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Perfect.
this would
read
typically
it.
be much more specific. We're tight on space, okay?
Yeah.
Welcome to the grant world.
All right, let's work our way through that.
Okay.
Before we go to number two, what do
Okay.
you mean by outreach? Are there certain amount of organizations you want to reach, or how would you measure outreach?
So
That's
outreach
your
means
outcome.
would be going. So what we do currently is that we go to different specific places like the hospitals. We go to community centers. We go to DHHS. We go to the schools. We go to different I lost the word. I'm sorry. I apologize. Like other clinics and stuff. So we go to them and we put our pull tabs up in the bathrooms and gas stations and so on. And then we leave our pamphlets. And then also we have in our community outreach, we do radio spots on all the radio stations in our area. And then we also meet with other community members, such as the Department of Health and Human Services, Yurok Tribal. We collaborate with them. So that's what we do.
Okay. In the outcome, based on what you just told me, in the outcome column, Crystal, why don't you erase where it says number of people attended? Take that out. You mentioned no less than 11 different organizations that you connect with.
Mm-hmm.
They mentioned 11. What if your outcome said your outreach income 20 organizations, reach 20 organizations?
Mm-hmm.
So where it says number of people to attend, Crystal, it would say 20 organizations.
I can't modify the document because that part is typed in.
So instead of number of people to attend, it's going to be number of organizations that you collaborate with.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned 11, but maybe.
Well, also too, Vince, is that we don't just do that in one county. We do it like in Coos. We do it in Brookings. We do it in up in Coos Bay, and we do it in Gold Beach, and we do it down in Klamath, and we go all over our specific area that it states in the grant that we are to serve those communities. So I don't know if you can count those too, because it's just not this area. Oops, lost you.
What I was just showing, for example, is you mentioned 11. I'm saying for purposes of growth, we're going to shoot for 20 different organizations. So the goal is to increase outreach. How many? 20. Instead of what you mentioned 11, I'm going to say 20 as a goal, because that seems to be a stretch, but doable. And if you were to pull that up, so in the outcome category, Crystal, if you can manipulate it, it would say 20 contacts in 2022.
Oh my God, why isn't this
That's your.
Give me 1 second. Hold on.
Yes. So as she's working on putting that in there, that's the outcome. You mentioned 11, which is great, but now we're pushing the envelope here, and we're going to say 20 as a good outcome. Now, the result over in the far right corner, what percentage, if you were able to go from 11 to 20, you'd have almost a 50% increase, like 45% increase. So that would be pretty healthy if you were able to accomplish that in your outreach within, actually that outcome should say 20, or the goal should say outreach increase in 2022. And the outcome would be 20 contacts. And what I mean by a contact is an organization. Okay. Now, over on the far right, if you're able to pull that off and you're successful with it, that means your result would be on the far right under result, your percentage increase would be going from 11 to 20. That's like a 45% increase. So that's the number I would put in there, 45% increase in contacts. And that's just one goal. That's just one thing that's measurable, right? Yeah. So that's just one example.
There we go. Made it work.
Increase was one goal. Did you have another goal?
That you can. What was my second goal? I did have another goal. To collaborate with other entities.
Is that the same as outreach, or is it different?
Collaboration is different than outreach. Collaboration means that you bring in, like, we would collaborate with the Yurok tribe to form, to be able to bring in, because it's just not written for our tribe; it's written for Native Americans. So we could bring,
coalition.
Yes, a coalition. Thank you.
And how many collaborations do you have right now with other entities?
Yurok, UHS, and the Rape Crisis Center, 3. Oh, and DHS, that's 4. Okay. We have 4.
4. All right. Yeah. Well, we were to, and the outcome, what if we were to say we want to go from 4 to 10? Is that realistic? Is it realistic?
Yeah, it could be. Yes.
Just say, Crystal, don't say go from, just say 10. Yeah, just say 10. The outcome is 10 collaborations or collabs. Whatever fits. Cool. Got it. Yep. So that would be an increase from 4 to 10, right? And that's like a 60% increase, right? Something like that. Increase. Yes. There you go. Beautiful. Good job, Chris. Okay. There you have, just off the top of the head, in this area, based on what we talked about earlier, reduction of domestic violence is the major initiative. That's pretty big concept, right? That's a big global concept. You've created 2 short-term goals. One, is the outreach, increase outreach in 2022. You're going to shoot for 20 contact or organizations that you can outreach to, up from 11. So if you're able to pull that off in the remaining couple months in 22, that would be a 45% increase. That's significant. That's significant. But your second goal in the major focus area of reducing domestic violence is to collaborate with other agencies. Currently, you have 4. In fiscal year 22, you want to go from 4 to 10 collaborations. That, if you're able to pull that off, and that's doable, it's doable, it's not crazy. Both of those outcomes, 20 contacts and 10 collaborations, don't seem to be too radically out of whack. So if you're able to pull that off and get 10 collaborations, you'd have a 60% increase in your collaborations, right? So what you've done here is, now that you've got these little perimeter, you've done this, now you can start breaking this down into more definition, right?
Okay. Are you there? I lost you.
Of doing an objective and goals and outcomes and results. Now we go to A, above it, where it says design. How are you going to do it? This is where you describe, let's start with goal 1. How are you going to increase your outreach in 22 to go from 11 organizations currently to 20? How are you going to get there? This is where you describe, you don't actually have to give me word for word, but this is where you would describe it. This is where you would describe how you're going to do it. Same thing with your collaboration with other entities. You're at 4 and you want to go from 4 to 10. That is your second goal. It's doable, it's reachable. And how are you going to do it? This is where you describe, well, we're going to send out, we're going to start a phone campaign, or we're going to, do personal visits. First we're going to identify who the potential outreach organizations could be. Then we're going to reach out to them verbally or send a letter or an email of introduction that's going to be written by me. And then we're going to try to ask for a visit and go fit. This is where you describe what literally you're going to do to reach goal number 1, increase your outreach. And this is where you're going to describe goal number 2, how you're going to increase your collaboration with other entities. Literally, step by step, what are you going to do to make it work, which supports your outcome? And then in your description of your design, if you start working it and you look at it and go, wait, there is absolutely no way that we can go from 4 collaborations to 10 in this fiscal year. It's impossible. But we could go from 4 to 7. Okay, time to readjust. Time to readjust, right? Time to readjust your outcomes, readjust your results, and readjust your design, and it's also going to affect everything else. But this is the process that we go through with identifying the objective, the goals, and then starting to write the design, how you're going to get there, right? That's the process. So as Crystal is doing here, she's not actually putting your words in there, but she's giving, this is where you tell the reader, right, how you're going to achieve your goals. Otherwise, it's just statistics. It's just numbers, which is fine, but you want to be able to describe what your logic model is showing. And that's what Crystal is explaining above. Describe how you're going to reach your first goal. Identify the first potential outreach organization you're going after, maybe a letter of introduction, try to meet them, start a phone campaign, whatever it takes to get their agreement to to work with you, to be able for you to show your display your material. Second thing, which is more complicated, and that is to establish, and that's what you probably should say in your design. It's more complicated to take it to the next level and to form a collaboration, a partnership.
Mhm.
And that's more difficult, right? You're
Mhm.
going beyond just, hey, can we put some flyers in your receptionist window to, we actually want to collaborate with you. We want to get referrals to you or from you. It's more complicated. So it's going to take a different approach and a different design, but it's all part of the big picture, reducing domestic violence. That makes sense?
Yes,
You
it
know,
does.
doing that? Okay. It goes hand in hand with what you've established so far with your goals and your outcomes and your results. But again, as you're going through this and you say, no, there's no way we can go from 11 organizations for outreach to 20 in 1 year. That's too much of a big jump, or it's not enough. We think we can do 25. Okay, let's change our goal, let's change our outcome, let's change our results before we go too much further with this, process. So A and B support each other, right? You've got to be able to describe um, in your narrative, in your design portion of your narrative, how you're going to do what you've outlined here in B, your major objective and goal, and vice versa. Got to make sure they're realistic. And if you sit down and you start working on your design, you're going, oh, we can do much better than that. Now that we think about it, we've got the resources out there. We are going to do everything that's written there, but I think we can get 25 organizations in the bag instead of 20. Okay, make the adjustment on your logic model. Boom. So it's a collaborative event here, what you're going through, A and B, making sure that your design narrative matches up with your logic model process, if that makes sense. And Crystal's done a great job of spelling that all out. I think you can see how it works.
I will also, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I'll also send this out so that everyone has, this example. To, you know what I mean, reference when you're
Right.
actually working on your projects. Now question, is everyone on the same page? Are we doing okay? Do we have any questions that we can answer at this moment?
Again, remember this applies to whatever scenario you're in, not just healthcare like we're doing here or domestic violence. It could be anything, but it's the same process.
Questions? No?
Well, let's move on to C. Huh?
Oh, I was just gonna say, did you see anything in the chat?
No, I was actually just about to let you know that there are no questions.
Okay, all right.
Hopefully it's making perfect sense. So let's move down to C real quick. The evaluation, as I alluded to before, can you scroll up just a little bit?
Let me,
on that?
I'm at 175%. So let me.
Just scroll up. Just scroll up a little bit so we can see A, B, and C. Okay, perfect. Right there. Right there. All right. You've got 90% of this done now. You've got your logic, you've got your major objectives, the goals, the outcomes. At least theoretically, you have them based on what we think is realistic. You've given a design, or you will give a design of how you're going to accomplish that. Now, C goes hand in hand with your design and with your major objectives, goals, and outcomes. How are you going to evaluate your progress? How are you going to do that? So perhaps what you would say here is at the mid-year mark, or 6 months into the program, and let's give it a more specific time. Let's say at the 6-month mark, we will review and analyze the status of our 20 contacts outcome, as well as the status of our 10 collaborations. To see if we are on track.
Type in as quickly as possible.
Yeah, just to see if we are on track, period. Or you can just leave it there, to see if we are on track.
Beautiful.
Now here, if you might need to take it to the next step and say what you're gonna do. If you're behind schedule, you'll do this, this, and this. Or if you're ahead of schedule, you'll do this, this, and this.
Guys,
So if we were being,
sorry, is everyone muted? Getting this weird feedback.
so Crystal, if we are behind schedule, we will do capital A. Gary, let's see my phone. If we are ahead of schedule, we will do B. And this is where you would describe the action that you would take so that you can measure performance. That's really, at this point, that's really all you can do. And you can put more details in there. You can be specific. I don't know your industry. I don't know who your outreach contacts would be or your collaborations would be. I know you mentioned them, but this is where you name names. This is where you would give some detail. I said the status of 20 contacts. You would probably provide more detail there. That you provide the status of your relationship with XYZ agency, DCF agency, XY, ABC agent, and go through and be more specific as to, how you're going to measure based on what you put in B. You know what I'm saying? I don't know your industry well enough to give more definition to this. You do. So this is where you would define at the 6-month mark, at the 12-month mark, and I'm just pulling those as benchmarks. This is where you would describe how you're going to analyze, what you're going to look at, and what you're going to do if you're above, if you're behind or ahead of schedule based on your original projections. But this is where you give some detail of how you would evaluate your progress. And it could be monthly. This could be a monthly evaluation review. It could be quarterly, it could be semi-annually, it could be yearly, but it's based on your program and your section B here, your objectives. Where are you in this process? I don't have the knowledge of your industry to give the details that you would put in there. Okay, that's what C would be in a nutshell without, there'd be more detail there, matching up with your objectives and with your design. And then we would go to C would be, or D there, sustainability. This is totally up to you. This is totally your verbiage, because this is the section where you talk about other things, other resources that you are looking into or have understandings with, memorandums of understanding that you have with organizations, other resources that you're going to tap into, other revenue streams that you might be able to create that support this overall objective. So this is where, Crystal, this is up to the, I don't know how to say it here. This would be up to the potential recipient to put the verbiage in. Put the potential verbiage in for other resources, other usable resources that benefit the initiative.
And does this make sense, guys? 1 for yes, 2 for no.
Remember, sustainability is you're describing how you're going to use all other resources out there to your advantage, to the best of it, as long as they fit in with what's going on here. Whether it's generating new revenue, looking for other grants that might support this, donations from the tribe or from individuals, pursuing grants in the private sector, et cetera, et cetera. This is where you get into detail. I can't just come up with it because this needs to be totally from you. Yeah, pursuing other opportunities, other resources.
Sorry for the spelling, guys.
That's okay.
My brain's not working.
think there's only one. Yeah, and then that would be it for there. And then the budget, I'm not gonna go through the budget because the budget is gonna be, you know what a budget is. The budget, whether it's direct costs or indirect costs, has to reflect what you're doing above. So that is a reflection of all of the above, of B and C, of, what you're doing. Yeah, must reflect and must be accurate. Yeah. And then you know what the executive summary is. It's everything. It's taking snippets of all of the above, taking all of the above and putting it into a summary. The summary is just that. It's taking the best parts of everything, the design, the budget, everything, and putting it into the narrative. That's why we do it last, because you're going through this process and you're composing, right? You're working on this, you're manipulating, that's why the summary is done last, because you're bound to make changes as you're going through this process. So you want to do the summary last, even though it's usually the first thing on the grant application. You're preparing it last because you're capturing all the previous information and data, and you're taking the best of it, the most important parts of it, and putting it into your summary, if that makes sense, right? So yeah, it's taking snippets of the above, the best parts of everything, design, budget, etc., and tying the whole story together. That's right. That is what the executive summary, review, whatever they call it. It's the catch-all of what you're doing. So you've got to be able to describe what you're doing. They call it, sometimes we call it the elevator speech. Be able to describe what your organization is, what your passion is on a ride from the first floor to the fifth floor. And if you can't do it, it's too complicated. So that's what it is here. You're describing in probably a few words compared to all the other sections, a few words of what you're trying, who you are, what you're trying to, who you are, what the problem is, how you're going to address it, and who benefits from it. That's what the executive summary is. And if there's a cost associated with it, you want to integrate that as well. All makes sense. That's it. That's it.
All right, folks, does that make sense? Can I get a 1 for yes, 2 for no? And I do see that Deidre made a comment, so I'm going to go ahead and address that. So I recently worked on a grant proposal for a MOU agreement for BLM employees. The format was different, but the same.
Mm-hmm. The format's going to be different from grant to grant, but the concept's going to be the same. And what we're talking about, all of these things are going to be integrated into the grant. They call it different things, but this is basically what you're doing is you're taking this information, whether they call it a logic model or whatever. Like I said, different names, but basically these are the areas and these are the skill sets that we need to master. And I hope this has been helpful. You've done it. You've gone through the whole thing. And look at that. Straight on, bottom of the hour. Straight on. Man, we're good.
We have made it, folks.
Yes. I mean, you can't get any more specific.
Right. What was I going to say? I was going to mention, I will absolutely send this to all of you, to, have as a resource to look through and kind of remember, oh, you know what? I remember, Vince and Crystal and Oista mentioned this. So let me go ahead and, rework it. And I do see that Deidre mentioned, the information provided helps me see how to write the proposal and where I can improve. And that is music to my ears, because that's exactly what I wanted this session to be, an opportunity to learn where, we may need improvement. And if you didn't know how to do any of this, I really hope you learned quite a bit today to be able to move forward. So thank you all so much. I know today's been a very long day, but we appreciate every single one of you that made it and stayed through the whole thing. So give yourselves a pat on the back, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do we have any questions? Because we are here to help and answer anything else that you might have. And I know we don't want to keep anyone too much longer or anything like that, but again, we are here to help.
There are no questions in the chat, just the comment that Crystal mentioned, but other than that, no questions in the chat.
Anyone else want to add anything, ask anything? This is
And
the
you
time.
you can always send an email to Crystal or Ista, or to me directly, and do our best to answer if you have any follow-up questions.
Yes. Do not feel shy. Osta, do you mind plugging in all of our contact information?
Yes, I'm doing it right now.
Perfect. So yes, feel free to email each of us. I'm happy to provide you with all the resources that I've gained over the years. Vince is more than happy to answer questions. I'm happy to get you in contact with other, grant writer subject matter experts that we work with that are trusted and well known. But absolutely. Thank you, Kathleen. And I really do hope I get to see a lot of you next week. I'm really excited for that session or those sessions. Something we've been working on for quite a while, and hopefully it leaves you with walking away with some resources that we've personally developed and worked on. So I'm really excited, very, very, very thrilled to be doing that. Grants management, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I released all of you. Just please take a minute to fill out our survey. It lets us know how we're doing, how we can improve, all of that fun stuff. We are not afraid of criticism. I can tell you that much. So please let us know anything and everything that you have on your mind that could benefit you or others in future sessions. Thank you, Wista. She plugged our emails in there. Complete the survey. What else was I going to say? This is going to be pushed onto YouTube within a week. So I'll be sure to send this out to participants, or I'll have Wista send this out to participants as well, so that you guys have direct access. I would like the info on next week's class. Wista, do you mind going ahead and copying and pasting that little paragraph that you created with all the links?
Already
Beautiful.
on it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Well, again, thank you all so much. Vince, if you want to say thank you, do a plug for you or anything like that, by all means.
Thank you. Big parade waves. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Crystal, Osta, Lewis, if you're still there. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone, and your wonderful, excellent questions and concerns, comments.
Yeah.
See you all next week.
Yes. See you all next week.
Thank you, Vince. Truly appreciate it.
You're welcome.